Power Rangers had been enjoying an incredible amount of success since its debut back in 1993. Its unique blend of cheesy American high school drama and over-the-top tokusatsu action quickly made it a global smash hit, and over time, its writing had steadily improved. Characters had evolved beyond their two-dimensional personalities, stories were more complex with plot threads spanning through multiple episodes, and Season 3 even left fans on one hell of an emotional cliffhanger. However, while the quality of the show had continued to rise, its popularity had started to decline. It was still consistently ranked high in its weekly time slot on Fox Kids, but the numbers just weren't on the same level as they had been previously. This, combined with the declining merchandise sales, as well as the natural competition coming from other similarly produced TV shows, some of which made by Saban themselves, meant that there was a real fear that the show had worn out its welcome, and was no longer the phenomenon that it once was. Obviously, something needed to be done in order to breathe new life into the franchise. Many ideas were thrown about, including the possibility of killing off the main characters and replacing them with a brand new team. I mean, they did do a variation of this idea later on, but still, jeez, that's a bit drastic, don't you think? Of course, ultimately what they decided is that the show needed a fresh coat of paint. Not just simply adapting another Sentai series, but fundamentally changing the look and feel of the show itself, reaching the next stage of its natural growth and evolution. It was something that Saban had been afraid to do himself out of fear of alienating their audience. But just like a collapsed Megazord on the freeway, there was no getting around it. Big changes had to be made for the show to survive. The honeymoon period was over, as Power Rangers would ditch the Mighty Morphin moniker and go Zeo. Power Rangers Zeo first aired on Fox Kids on April 20th, 1996. Whilst continuing elements and storylines established from the previous seasons, it would begin adapting parts from the latest Sentai series at the time, Choriki Sentai Oranger, the 19th season overall. That season followed a team of specially trained soldiers working for a military organization that used mystical energy from an ancient civilization to prevent an evil mechanical force from taking over the universe. The decision to change up a lot of the familiar aspects of the show was one that was jointly made by Saban Entertainment, the Fox Network, Toei, the ones who owned the Super Sentai license, and toy manufacturer Bandai. See, while toy sales for the show in the US were still strong, with profits coming in at more than $1 billion, overall sales had begun to drop quite a fair bit. I suppose there's only so many times that you can sell the same action figure before kids start getting bored of it. Most companies would wait to begin implementing changes when things really started tanking, but Saban thought it would be a lot easier to make the switch now and avoid the inevitable downturn. As already discussed, making a big change like this was already going to be a tricky sell, and they would run the risk of turning away many of their longtime fans. That's why I think Season 3 was almost designed in a way to help with that transition, with many of its stories revolving around big changes. New Zords, new powers, a few cast changes, and a whole new set of heroes with a whole new set of suits. I can't say for certain if all of this was part of the bigger plan, but there had to have been some form of forward thinking going on here, maybe partly due to what had happened in Season 2. This season would also begin what would become a long-standing tradition of the franchise, as each subsequent season would change up the name, logo, and many other aspects to properly adopt the Sentai it was using at the time. This is arguably what helps the show to remain on the air for as long as it did, as each new season felt like a fresh start, allowing newcomers to join in without the fear of having years worth of backstory to catch up on. To assist in the transition leading up to the debut of the new show, reruns of Season 3 episodes would be preceded by a series of shorts that would take the place of the usual Today on Power Rangers segment. Collectively known as the Zeo Serial, it slowly showed the arrival of the new villains of the season. We see the reaction to their arrival from the viewpoints of various different characters, including Bulk and Skull, Rita and Zed, and some that only appeared in this serial, like a pair of scientists, a freaked out janitor, and a news reporter with the greatest name I have ever heard, Wolfgang Blizzard. God, I am so naming a D&D character after him. The serial itself is actually pretty good at building up anticipation. We get some really good scenes of Rita and Zed contemplating their next move, Bulk and Skull naturally freaking out when they encounter the new foot soldiers, and the youth center seemingly being turned into an emergency shelter, with Lieutenant Stone and Ernie also getting more prominent roles. All the while there is this lingering question of where are the Power Rangers, leaving a real sense of dread as even the Angel Grove governor begs for them to return. Each shot also ends with a slow reveal of the new logo, as geometric shapes are carved out of a golden block, while a choir continues to keep telling the audience it's coming.
It's coming!
Sadly, the serial is revealed to be non-canon by the time the new season actually begins, so all of these developments end up being completely moot. I don't want Wolfgang Blizzard to just simply disappear into the ether. Got it. My personal headcanon is that he's the father of Sharky from Season 1. Now he's forever a part of Power Rangers history. Okay, there's going to be a lot to cover right at the start, but hopefully I'll get through it without too much front loading. So let's not waste any more time and get right into the new season of Power Rangers Zeo, starting with a two-part opener with some major changes. Picking up where the last season left off, Rita and Zed revel in their success of finally defeating the Power Rangers, until their celebration is interrupted by the arrival of a new villainous faction, and they are forced to vacate the Moon Palace. Meanwhile, the Rangers wallow around the ruins of the now destroyed command center, until they discover the fully intact Zeo Crystal. It leads them to a secret underground base where Zordon and Alpha are revealed to have survived, and they must prep their Rangers with a new set of powers to face the oncoming threat. Right, strap yourselves in guys, as there's going to be a lot of info dumping on the new status quo here. Let's begin with the new bad guys for this season, the Machine Empire, a massive army of robotic soldiers that have broken away from something called the United Alliance of Evil. They're led by a group known as the Royal House of Gadgetry, consisting of their ruler King Mondo, his wife Queen Machina, their son Prince Sprocket, and their loyal footman Clank and Orbis. They've got some interesting and unique designs to them, with gears and wires being shaped into hairpieces, crowns, and other royal affections. It's very steampunk inspired and a really fun take on what a metal aristocracy could look like. We don't get too much out of them personality wise to begin with, but we do get enough. The king and queen are rather snooty, Sprocket is a little bit of a spoiled brat, and Clank has a Scottish accent for some reason.
Yes, Your Highness, I understand perfectly. Rita Repulsor and Lord Zed are as good as gone. You can count on it.
Their main attack force are the foot soldiers known as Cogs. I quite like these guys. While maybe not as impressive looking as the Tengas, their metallic bodies, menacing faces, robotic movements, and digitized voices make for an intimidating foe, at least until they become regular fodder for the Rangers. The Empire's arrival is a hugely bombastic one, as they waste no time in launching a full-scale assault on the Moon Palace. It's an unexpected one for the villains, as they were just celebrating their ultimate victory over the Rangers, until Rita looks through her telescope and is horrified by what she sees. Thankfully, Tintin points out that it was just a spider on the lens. No, of course it's the invading robots, and apparently they are so terrifying that even Zed and Rita are afraid of them, and they are forced to vacate the Moon Palace. In their panic to escape, they realize that they have no place to escape to, and despite much protesting from Zed, it's decided that they're going to stay with Rita's father for a while. Everyone bundles into Serpentera, and as they fly away, Lord Zed swears that he will one day return. While the comedy of them bickering is a little bit juxtaposed to their plight, it is rather shocking to see the villains that we've known and come to love just unseated from their positions so easily. It's actually kind of eerie to see the Moon Palace looking completely abandoned, the for sale sign notwithstanding. It's a heck of a way to introduce your new main foes. But don't worry too much, as Lord Zed says, they will be back. On the Rangers side of things, they're also getting some massive upgrades. Whilst the command center is no longer around, they now have access to a new base of operations, the Power Chamber. This is a vast improvement. While the original command center is iconic, stop that. It was also rather bare and cheap looking, no doubt a consequence from the slim budget they had at the beginning. Now this is a command center. Much more impressive looking and has a lot more space for the actors to work with. My favourite part is the wall where they display their old Ranger suits and weapons, a real great detail that honours their history. Although I noticed there's no Green Ranger suit there. Maybe it'll be like Season 1 and just turn up occasionally. Since their old powers have been retired, i.e. destroyed, and Ninja has returned to the Temple of Power, the Rangers now get their new powers from the Zeo Crystal. While Kat remains as the Pink Ranger and Tanya steps up to be yellow, the others gain new colours as Rocky becomes blue, Adam is now green, and Tommy completes his transition to leader as the new Red Ranger. However, Billy willingly steps down from Ranger duties, allowing Tanya to take his place, saying that his time with the Alien Rangers made him realise that he could be more helpful to the team as a technical advisor. This is a good little twist and honestly works really well, as it gives Billy another wrinkle instead of being another member of the team. and he's probably done all he can do as a ranger, so why not let someone else have a shot at it? With the new powers comes new morphers, the Zeonizers, the first wrist-mounted morphers a ranger team has had. I really love the Zeonizers. They have a really cool, sleek design to them, and the red and gold parts really pop out. Literally. I do remember the toys being rather tricky to get the hang of, as you need to have precise arm movements to get them to connect together and activate. Still really cool looking. The morphing sequence is also updated. While they still call out its morphin time before changing, they now additionally say the phrase Zeo Ranger followed by their number and color. So Zeo Ranger 1 pink, Zeo Ranger 2 yellow, and so on. The suits then form around them over a digital grid, whilst bright lights flash behind them. It's a great sequence, and I like how it's the Pink Ranger that gets the additional shot of the suit forming over her arm. Usually differences like that are saved for the Red or 6th Ranger. The suits are also really great too. While there is more focus on the individual colours, like it was with the Alien Rangers, it's broken up a lot better by the white accents and gold circuitry patterns on the chest. The shape of the visors on the helmets will take a bit of getting used to, but it does fit with the design of the Zeo subcrystals, and helps to make them stand out from other Ranger teams. Still, why does Tanya have 2 visors? If she's looking out of one of them, what is the purpose of the other? Ah, whatever, these suits are still awesome. Hey, don't forget to change up your wardrobe to match new Ranger colour, guys. I feel like I'm forgetting something. Something very important to the show. Now, what could it be? Oh, yes, of course, Bulk and Skull, our favourite pair of bumbling goons. Their season starts off in a very bizarre way. Skull surprises Bulk with an out-of-commission motorbike and sidecar, with the idea that if they fix it, it can become their new patrol bike. However, they're suddenly surprised by the arrival of Goldar and Rito, who uncharacteristically ask them for help. It turns out that the 2 of them are suffering from amnesia, having been caught in the explosion that destroyed the command center, and have been wandering aimlessly around Angel Grove. They beg for Bulk and Skull to take them in, saying that they'll do anything for them if they do. Taking advantage of this, Bulk and Skull decide to make them their servants. It is quite funny to see the 2 having some form of power over the monsters that used to torment them. We'll just see how well this dynamic lasts. This 2-parter really makes it feel like the show has been upgraded in a major way. Everything feels fresher and more exciting, like every aspect of it has leveled up. This goes especially for the theme song, which feels like a true sequel to the original. An angelic choir welcomes you in, the electric guitar hits even harder, and the lyrics really build up the Rangers as being stronger than they have ever been up to this point. What's also cool is that Ernie and Lieutenant Stone are now being billed in the opening titles along with the others. That's really great since Ernie is one of the few supporting characters that's been around since the beginning. Good for him finally getting top billing. The show apparently also had an alternative logo outside the US and Canada where it was simply called Zeo Rangers, but I vaguely remember that, so if it was a thing, it didn't last too long. Okay, I hope you're all still with me because that was a lot to get through. But now that all of that's out of the way, hopefully we can simply focus on the episodes now, at least until our next big info dump.
Hey, once a Ranger, always a Ranger.
Somebody call cut!
Damn, Tanya's only been here a few days and already is hooking up with a guy. But he would be so proud. Tanya is settling into her new life in Angel Grove, including helping out a guy named Sean, who is studying for a big exam. However, tensions rise between them when Sean plans to cheat on his exams. Meanwhile, Billy is preparing a new set of zords for the Rangers, but trouble is brewing as King Mondo sends down a fleet of cogs to find their secret hangar, and destroy the zords before they're completed. Obviously they don't succeed, and the Rangers get a chance to pilot their new Zeo zords, which this time is inspired by varying symbols of ancient Earth mythology, including the Moai statues from Easter Island, the Dogu figurines from Japan's Jomon period, an Egyptian Sphinx, Taurus the Bull, and the Mighty Phoenix. They get a pretty exciting debut as well, as they not only battle a monster named Staroid, but also have to take on a bunch of Quadrofighters, the Machine Empire's attack jets. It's much more dynamic than just a straight up fight with a monster, and shows off the individual Zords a lot better, with Kat and Tanya firing off a massive payload of projectiles, Tommy providing air support, and Rocky and Adam just straight up ramming their opponents. Combined they form the Zeo Megazord, which looks really awesome. It's like a warrior that perfectly represents a multitude of cultures. While perhaps not intentional, it also feels like it's paying partial tribute to Ninja. I can't be the only one who looks at this design and think that they definitely must have taken some inspiration from him. Or maybe I just want an excuse to play this clip again.
Evil makes me so angry!
They certainly waste no time getting in a story focused on Tanya. Makes sense, she is the new girl here. And like I said, she's adjusted quickly to her new life, settling in with Kat's family and getting a boyfriend in Sean, the captain of the school's baseball team. And they do make for quite the cute pair. The conflict surrounding Sean's potential cheating on the test is handled really well. Tanya is trying her best to sympathize with Sean's baseball passions, while also insisting that his education is just as important. Sean, on the other hand, only really cares about baseball and stubbornly refuses to listen to anything she has to say. Of course, Sean does eventually do the right thing and the relationship is saved. But I like the fact that this situation is handled in a more realistic manner of a couple arguing over what is right and wrong, instead of one of the Rangers educating a fellow student or younger kid about what the right decision is. Bulk and Skull's contributions are mostly inconsequential. While we see them bossing around Rita and Golda a bit and taking their new patrol bike out for a spin, they actually end up inadvertently helping out the Rangers, as they come across a few roving cogs searching for the secret Zord hangar. Sadly, we don't see them interacting with the Rangers as the cogs move away from the duo before the fight begins. It is a shame that the two groups haven't interacted yet this season, but we are just getting started and we have plenty of episodes to go. Then again, perhaps they want to avoid them as they now have a pair of monsters as their personal butlers. Interesting game you're working on there, Rocky. Hope it's better than Rise of the Robots. Rocky and his classmate Jennifer are working on a software program for their computer class, but things take a turn for the worse as their project data is stolen by a cog and used to program Mondo's latest creation, Silo. But how about that? We didn't have to wait too long for a Rocky-focused episode this season, did we? And it's one about him trying to win the affections of a girl? I guess he figured that Billy's success with the ladies was down to his color scheme. Unfortunately, his technique is about as smooth as sandpaper, as he keeps making a fool of himself in front of her. Though, to be fair, she is rather cold towards him, focusing more on the project and ignoring most of his contributions, even when he's trying to be helpful. He can be a bit of a goofball, but he does take the project seriously, especially when he loses the password for it to the cogs. I do like that he stands up for himself when Jennifer goes off on him at the end of the episode. He's got some self-respect at least. The two do make up and potentially start dating afterwards, so I guess things are going well between them. Though you might want to reconsider this relationship, Rocky. Apparently the password that she was using is Mook? I'm not sure she thinks that fondly of you, man. Despite the Rangers fighting a giant monster in the last episode, it's here where we discover how Mondo makes his creations grow, as Clank hurls Orbis at the monster and he is injected with some sort of growth serum or something. At least it makes more sense than hucking a grenade at them. Silo is a pretty formidable monster for the Rangers, looking like a heavily armed walking battle tank, akin to a Gundam. He's able to overpower their Megazord through brute strength and missiles, and even tries throwing them straight into the sun. The programming also causes him to speak to the Rangers in questions and answers, followed by the phrase, "You lose." A fighting game with a quiz element to it? What the hell kind of program were you working on, Jennifer? Fortunately, Billy has equipped the Megazord with a rather nifty surprise, the battle helmets. The Rangers can swap out different helmets for the Megazord, allowing it to use different functions like rocket boosters, gravity fields, cannon blasts, and even telekinesis. What's also great is that depending on which helmet is being used, the corresponding Ranger swaps into the main pilot seat. It's a really nice detail, but it's also kind of funny that Tommy is the only one that has to keep hopping between seats. It must be pretty difficult to do so as well. That's a rather snug looking cockpit they've got there. Of course they need the main helmet to deliver the finishing blow, but I like the helmet swapping gimmick. It certainly made the toys really fun.
It's a shame you had to get by with only bows and arrows.
Funny, Alpha.
There's not much from Bulk and Skull here. They're assigned to patrol the local junkyard where the monster was being built, and they run off as soon as they encounter it. Maybe because Skull realized where that floppy disk was inserted.
Get it? Wasting? Wasting! Wasting!
This is gonna be a painful one. Tommy and Kat have to pretend to be married for a school assignment, and Kat brings along a baby to make the experience more realistic. King Mondo sends down Boo Boo the Clown to amplify the baby's wailing, and soon his crying becomes so loud that it threatens to destroy all of Angel Grove. Of all the episodes in this season, this was the one I was least looking forward to, by a clear country mile. That crying that you heard? That goes on for a good chunk of the episode, and it is super annoying. I mean, nobody likes the sound of a crying child anyway, unless you work for this place. But this was just really pushing it for me. It's also such a bizarre way to make the story happen, with Kat just randomly acquiring this baby to help with their assignment. Okay, it's her neighbor's kid that she occasionally babysits, but couldn't you just pretend that you're in a childless marriage? Those do exist, you know. Is this an actual thing in America? Students are just assigned to be married for a week? Any Americans watching, if this is true, please explain. The only good thing that I can take from this is that we do see Tommy in a vulnerable position. He's usually practically perfect at everything he does, but watching him struggle with trying to be a responsible family man, even though we don't really see much of it, is honestly very intriguing and brings a relatable human quality to him. Plus, JDF did have a kid in real life while filming the show, so he probably knows all too well the struggles of parenthood.
I must say, though, I am looking forward to having kids of my own one day.
Oh, I'm certain you will, Kat. The stories they'll tell about him are something else. Okay, the only other good thing from this episode is a 2-minute comedy scene from Bulk and Skull as they race to the juice bar. This is just classic slapstick goodness from them as they cause havoc at a local farm. Mud flying everywhere, crashing through haystacks, they even somehow pick up one of the farmhands as well, all before crashing into Lieutenant Stone at the juice bar. It's a good laugh, but I wonder if the producers placed this here because they knew that by the end of this episode, we'd want to handle them like the Lieutenant is handling that ketchup bottle. Spoiler alert, but this is probably going to be my least favorite episode of the season.
He's eating him alive! I need a new sidekick.
If Tanya has 99 problems, her pitch certainly ain't one. After impressing the coach with her pitching talent, Tanya is asked to join the school's baseball team, which causes tension between her and Sean. Inspired by this, Sprocket sends down a monster called the People Pitcher, which leads to Rocky being captured and his Zeonizer stolen. It's the second appearance this season for Tanya's boyfriend Sean, but not one that ends in a happy way. After being struck out 3 times by his girlfriend, he starts treating her rather unfairly, his pride clearly hurting. Sadly, that same pride causes too much of an issue between them, and Tanya breaks up with him. I think this is the first time we've seen a conflict between two people not get resolved by the end of the episode. It's kind of refreshing, to be honest, seeing that the Rangers' lives are not completely perfect. It shows that the series is trying to grow up alongside its audience. This won't last for later seasons, but it's nice to see them trying out new ideas. It is kind of funny that Sean is getting struck out by a complete novice who somehow becomes a pro within a few days. But really, Tanya? You didn't know anything about baseball? How long have you been dating Sean and not talked about his passions at least once? No wonder the relationship ended so soon. You guys know nothing about each other. The battle with the People Pitcher is pretty much standard fare. It even follows the classic trope of capturing one of the Rangers. It does lead to one of the more creative cog battles as they try to get Rocky Zeonizer back by chasing them through the park, fighting them inside go-karts, pedalos, and jungle gyms. A nice change of pace. The People Pitcher doesn't really stand out that much other than making a few baseball-related puns, but we do get some interaction between Prince Sprocket and Clank and Orbis, mostly them bickering at each other, but it's the most dynamics we've seen from these new villains so far. Still, growing pains, I guess. Bulk and Skull are assigned to pick up trash around the batting cage, but skive off to hit a few rounds instead, almost ruining Sprocket's plan. Fortunately for him, Bulk can't seem to hit the broadside of a barn, which I suppose was lucky for them last episode. Funny enough, it seems like the two of them were actually excited to do some garbage picking. These guys? Man, they really have grown a lot, haven't they? Though maybe it's because their assignment was given a fancy-sounding name.
Operation Refuse Removal.
What the heck is refuse? He wants us to pick up the trash. Woohoo!
There's some advice for your parents. Next time you want your kids to clean their room, call it something like that. I'm sure it'll work like a treat. First a chimp, then a baby, now a dog? What's Kat gonna bring to her next project? A dinosaur? Kat is helping to train a rescue dog for the police department, but when she stumbles across some cogs trying to flood Angel Grove with lava, she's attacked and injured by their leader, the Digster. With no morpher and no way of contacting her friends, her hopes of rescue rely on a plucky little canine called Smokey. I'm a little let down by this episode. While I enjoy the idea of a single ranger trying to survive on their own using their natural skills and instincts, I think they came up a little short with what they could do with it. We could have dedicated a bit more time into watching Kat trying to avoid being spotted by the cogs, maybe using the local foliage to hide herself, or being careful not to fall off a cliff while being pursued. It would have created a lot of tension and made for a more exciting episode. I don't think that what they did was bad, I just feel like they could have done more if they didn't waste their time with other things. Now, I'm not talking about the dog. No, Smokey was fantastic here, and the clear star of the episode. He wasn't just there to look cute and adorable. He played his part well in getting help for Catherine, and even bringing in some good bits of comedy. It also turns out that cogs are scared of dogs, so maybe the Rangers just need to buy a few dog masks to chase the machines away. No, I think the issue comes with the introduction of the Rangers' new Zeo jet cycles, which were just randomly shown off at the beginning of the episode, like literally in the first scene. They don't even really play that much into the episode itself, except for when Kat gets injured, but you could have easily made that happen without bringing up the bikes. As for the cycles themselves, well, they certainly look a lot better than the shark cycles from last season, but I don't know. I guess I just find them too redundant when the Rangers can just teleport anywhere. Plus, swords are way cooler anyway. I think even Bulk and Skull's roles here are over-egged a little bit. They're tasked with looking after Smokey, who is humorously made a sergeant, so he technically outranks the two of them. And they end up losing him. Twice. Maybe I'm just a bit disappointed with their treatment so far this season. We're 7 episodes in now, and they've kind of just felt like an afterthought. There are some good episodes of them coming later, so maybe this is just teething pains for the new format. Also, they're made to pick up trash at the end of the episode, and now they hate it? I guess because it wasn't given a fancy name. See, parents, your kids will love doing the dishes if you call it something like Operation Dirt Destruction.
Again?
Yeah, kids are basically zombies nowadays, what with social media and everything. The Juice Bar holds an entertainment show for the kids, with its star attraction being Captain Pete and the Puppet Man. Aggravated by the sound of children laughing, King Mondo has Puppet Man turned into his dark servant, and it's not too long before the kids end up falling under his hypnotic gaze. This may be far from being the best episode of the season, but I don't really have too many bad things to say about it. Captain Pete is a very Pee Wee Herman style kids entertainer, and a lot of his act is pretty much ripped straight from him, though he apparently must be a mechanical genius because Puppet Man isn't simply a guy in a suit. I mean, technically he is, but in the context of the show, he is 100% a robot, otherwise Mondo couldn't have taken control of him. This guy used his engineering degree to build a robot for the sole purpose of entertaining kids. Imagine if he met Billy. The two of them could probably advance human technology by at least 100 years. The real purpose of this episode is just to introduce another weapon for the Rangers to use, the Defender Wheel, which is literally just a giant wheel that Tommy uses to ram into the monster. I suppose it makes for a neat enough toy, but I don't know. I guess I'm just not as impressed by it nowadays. There are a couple of good scenes with Tanya and Adam as well, with the latter helping to train the former in combat, presumably to help her become better as a ranger. There's also something I'm detecting here that I'll get my thoughts into later. The kids do a fine enough job in their roles and follow their directions rather well. A few of them are even quite hilarious. Arrgh. The one that gets the most attention is Arnie, Lieutenant Stone's nephew, whom Bulk and Skull have to reluctantly look after. He's your typical bratty kind of kid and probably had the most fun while filming this episode. While the duo are tormented by him, they do get their revenge by tricking him into saying Puppet Man's secret word. Nice to see these two finally getting the win for once. Alright, they're introducing my favourite characters to the MCU, Moon Boy and Star Stash. Rocky, Tanya and Kat get a chance to be extras on a sci-fi movie being filmed in Angel Grove. Prince Sprocket is also interested in making movies, but his directorial debut could lead to a bad ending for the Rangers. So what makes this episode a little bit special is that it actually takes footage from a tie-in movie to the O-Ranger TV show, called Choriki Sentai O-Ranger, the movie. Yeah, original name, I know. Not like this show can boast any better. Toei often makes additional movies that go alongside their TV production, as either an extension of the current season, crossovers between different Sentai teams, or to celebrate big milestones. In this case, O-Ranger the movie celebrated the 20th anniversary of Super Sentai as a whole. Because it was a theatrical release, it was filmed in widescreen, so obviously all of its footage had to be cropped to fit the 4:3 ratio for TV broadcasts, which may lead to some shots looking a little bit awkward. It's like when TikTok uses clips from a TV show, and it's debatable which one is worse. With that being said, this one is a little bit mad. Granted, it doesn't really start off that way, as we have the characters simply goofing around on a film set. Seems like a typical Power Rangers production to me. But then it gets really strange when they're captured by Sprocket and forced to star in his film. First they fight a guy named Freaky Fawcett, then they escape through a hole that chickens came out of, then they're suddenly on horseback chasing down a runaway bus, then they're attacked by 4 monsters all at once who suddenly merge into one big monster. And it makes no sense why they became a train, one of them is a friggin' pumpkin for crying out loud, and the Rangers defeat it by destroying the bridge it was on, making it plummet to its doom like a cartoon character. It's like they were rushing through the footage as quickly as they could for some reason. It just feels weird and disjointed. Good fun, but really hard to keep track of what's happening. At least Bulk and Skull have an easy time at the catering table on set, and Skull even gets to take part in the film.
Wow, I love showbiz.
From graduation to an alien vacation, Billy really is going up in the world. And off it. Billy graduates early from high school, but is soon visited by Sestro, who informs him that Aquitar is under threat by creatures known as hydro containers. As the Rangers battle one of these anti-aquatic adversaries, Billy prepares a device that can help to fend them off, but realizes that in order to ensure that it works, he must go with Sestro back to Aquitar. This episode really feels unusual, as it does see Billy disappear for a couple of episodes. I'm not sure why that is, but when characters have gone missing in the past, that's usually a sign that they may be departing the series. Now, spoiler alert, he does actually end up leaving the show later on, but we'll address that situation when we come to it. Here it just feels odd. His sudden graduation comes off as very rushed, both in storytelling and in universe. He's just told that he's graduating, handed his diploma, and that's it, off you go. It's pretty cold. He doesn't even get a ceremony or anything. Okay, that's a lie. He does get a hastily thrown together party to celebrate, but still, now he has to quickly think about what he's going to do for the rest of his life. Again, not to sound like an ignorant Englishman asking about American culture, but are early graduations really a thing? Because they sound terrifying. I don't blame him for jumping at a chance to get off this planet. It's probably the only solid bit of direction he was given. And I thought Bulk and Skull had it bad here. Speaking of which, they are partly responsible for Billy's minor excursion, as they help to reunite him with Sestro, and they don't really seem to ask many follow-up questions about why an extraterrestrial being wants to talk to one of their classmates. Considering everything they've been through over the years with putties, tengers and the like, they probably just accept this as normal life to them. They mostly just get involved in a minor subplot with Lieutenant Stone chasing around Rita and Goldar and trying to arrest them. Wait, so they were serious with that Rita poster? Gotta give the police department an A for ambition. The only other thing worth noting is the first use of the Ranger's Zeo Blaster. I haven't talked much about their weapons because there's not too much to say. There's your typical pistols and baton-like swords, and of course each Ranger gets a unique weapon, like a sword, hatchets, tonfa, a shield, and... well, apparently Tanya's weapon is called the Power Clubs, but they are just straight up nunchucks.
A fellow chucker, eh?
Combined, they form the Zeo Blaster in much the same way as their old Power Blaster. Their weapons are cool and different, but I'm not sure they're putting much focus on them this time round. Heck, I think they gave more attention to Billy's old glasses coming back.
Don't worry, sir. You can count on us to do everything that the script says.
This is not quite the character growth I imagined Rocky getting. Rocky uses some experimental seeds in this botany class, and it produces a very unusual metal-eating plant. King Mondo has his cogs steal the plant, and a part of it that was taken by Bulk and Skull, and transform them into a pair of monsters, named Pollinator and... Adrian. Yeah, this is clearly a thinly veiled reference to the movie Rocky. They even have Pollinator doing a Sylvester Stallone impression. It doesn't really amount to much though, although humorously they've given Adrian a thick Austrian accent. Gee, I wonder who that is in reference to. There is more character to these two than simply being another monster of the day, or monsters. The two are classed as brothers, and even behave like it at times, like when one of them messes up an attack and the other hits him thinking he did it on purpose, or when they stand up for each other, even against King Mondo himself. This could have made for a very compelling dynamic, but they drop it almost as quickly as they introduce it. Heck, we don't even know what happened to Adrian at the end of the episode, as only Pollinator is defeated. Does this mean he's still hanging around the machine base somewhere? Yeah, hi guys, I actually did look up their Sentai counterparts to find out what happened to them, and all I have to say is, Jesus Christ, I probably should have chosen my words better. They really have embraced the more wackier side of the show when it comes to Rocky. The character, not the movie. He seems very nonplussed about the fact that he just created a carnivorous plant that loves to devour metal. In fact, dare I say he looks pretty delighted by it. I don't blame him for being a bit concerned. He is infected by spores from the monster, which cause him to start turning into a plant. It makes him act all goofy, and I think he even starts hitting on Catherine. And it sounds a little bit dirty, to be honest.
Hey, nice leaves.
Nice leaves?
Yeah, your branches aren't bad either.
Shame on you, Rocky. This is a kid's show. Yes, the Ranger Wiki does say he was talking about her hair, but I think we all know what he really means. As mentioned before, Bulk and Skull take a piece of the plant themselves when their own attempt at botany fails. When the plants are stolen, they try to hunt them down by setting a Looney Tunes style trap for them. See, the goofiness of this show doesn't feel weird when it's coming from them. Lieutenant Stone also shows up to give them some advice, being an expert at gardening himself. Of course, it leads to more slapstick shenanigans from them, but it is nice to see the lieutenant being genuinely helpful, instead of simply barking orders at the two. I think they may be rubbing off on him. Or maybe that's just the manure.
Hey, look! A cow.
Hey, I'm alive! Oh, he's alive! Just kidding.
I'm not even going to make a joke here, this is just a good episode. While Adam begins taking classes in classical music, he discovers that there is a phantom piano player roaming the school. King Mondo decides he wants to capture him as a present for his wife's birthday, and sends down a battalion of cogs along with his latest robot, Mondo. Like I said, this is a good episode, and one that I have really been looking forward to watching again. It all revolves around this mysterious piano player that both Adam and the machines keep chasing after. The whole episode really allows itself to embrace the theme of classical music. We even get a cog fight in the halls of the school, set to a classical piece instead of one of the usual rock numbers, and it's a pleasant change of pace. Another neat little fact, most of the shots inside the school were filmed on location at Ulysses S. Grant High School, the same building used for the exterior shots of Angel Grove High. It does lead to some odd discrepancies between it and their normal soundstage, but it's still overall rather nice. The fight with Fortissimo is your standard Ranger action, with Adam taking more of a central role, in that he gets ganged up on the most and is even grabbed by the giant monster. He is beaten in the typical manner, however. The best part comes towards the end of the episode, when Adam finally catches up with the elusive Ivory Tinker, and removes his hood to reveal none other than Skull. No, I mean the character Skull. He reveals that he's been taking piano lessons since he was 3, and that he actually likes classical music. But he keeps it a secret from everyone because he's afraid of what they'll think, especially Bulk.
If anybody knew that I actually liked classical music, and Bulk, he never stopped making fun of me. I don't want anybody to laugh at me.
There's even some subtle hints to this twist early on, as Skull is a bit too eager to agree with Bulk when he makes fun of classical music, but praises Adam later on when he plays chopsticks on the piano. With some encouragement from Adam, Skull participates in a recital held at the youth centre, and while the crowd are initially bemused by his appearance, they're left completely stunned when he starts playing Chopin's revolutionary etude flawlessly. And by the way, Jason Narvi played all of this himself, as he is a classically trained pianist. He even finishes with a Mozart-style laugh from Amadeus. Oh, so that's where he gets his laugh from. But the best part really comes when Bulk sees him playing, as while he initially mocked classical music, he becomes absolutely enthralled by Skull's performance, and even starts getting emotional. He tells him that it was the most beautiful thing that he's ever heard, and apologizes to him for making fun of it. This has absolutely got to be one of the top 10 Bulk and Skull moments in the history of the show. I really love this episode for this moment alone. I suppose Mr. Hams is also quite fun.
I'm classical music, and this is Mr. Hams.
Oh, that was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
You're mad at me.
I mean heard.
Oh, they have the internet on computers now. After a virus scare in a high school computer lab, King Mondo is inspired to send down his own virus with the help of his monster, Mean Screen. With no access to the Zords and their weapons proving ineffective, the Rangers are in danger of being deleted by this technological terror. It is kind of fun looking back on how technology used to be in the olden days, long before flat screen monitors, VPNs, and the rise of social media. It was a much more peaceful time. Man, look at these cheesy old 90s websites. They're really giving web designers my passion vibes. Oh, what a time to be alive. It was also a time when most people probably didn't know how computers and viruses actually worked, including apparently those involved in the film and TV industry. I think this was not too long after the movie Hackers came out, and I guess all the studio execs must have decided that that was the benchmark for all stories involving cyber shenanigans. They started incorporating a lot of tropes and cliches that are still hanging around nowadays, including that one computer guy, like Raymond here, who isn't affiliated with any government or secret agency, and yet somehow knows more about computers than anyone else. Heck, this guy's so smart he figured out a way to defeat an alien virus before the actual alien robot did. If he goes missing after this episode, he's probably in some secret bunker somewhere working for the Pentagon.
Never gonna believe this on the internet.
The rest of the episode is your standard fare, to be honest. Although the fact that the Rangers' weapons are proving ineffective against Mean Screen does heighten the tension a fair bit. It is kind of strange that the monster was able to access the Rangers' database, including schematics on their weapons and zords, from a random computer. You should have better protection on your data, Zordon. Now that I think about it, this would have been a good place to introduce the Defender Wheel as a new weapon that Mean Screen hadn't seen before. Maybe even show it actually beating the monster. Bulk and Skull make a minor appearance as they're sent to direct traffic, but end up in the wrong place. Nothing really that huge. What is huge is that Billy contacts the Rangers at the end of the episode, and says that he's coming back home. But Mondo catches wind of this, and vows to ensure that he doesn't survive the return journey.
I can't believe this is happening! I'm not working anymore! Where's my agent?
He's playing golf, Dad! Try the cell phone!
Man, can you imagine an entire season set in space? That would be something, wouldn't it? As Billy pilots a ship heading back home, the Rangers try to guide him in safely, but a few blasts from the Machine Empire causes him to be knocked off course. His new destination? The sun. This was a more intense episode than I was expecting, and one that involved surprisingly little Ranger action. The scenes with Billy inside the spacecraft feel very claustrophobic. The lighting and the shots are very well done, and help to convey that sense of isolation and helplessness that Billy's experiencing. Though his cockpit does seem to have more space in it than the Rangers' Megazord. The Rangers act like a proper military force here, coordinating their actions as they try to bring Billy back in with a tractor beam. Tommy even gets to have his own Shatner-esque fire moment. It's quite cool seeing these guys being so professional. We do get one scene of the Rangers heading into a warehouse to look for a new fuel cell, only to encounter some cogs and a monster called Mechanizer. The tension only continues to rise when the building catches on fire, and they tease the possibility that Tommy might not have made it out alive. Yeah, right. Like this show is going to kill off its biggest cash cow that easily. So, kudos to this episode for really ramping up the tension and giving us a story that didn't rely on many of the usual Power Ranger tropes. Very good effort. They didn't even need Bulk and Skull that much this time, as the two are sent on an orienteering exercise by Lieutenant Stone. The most we get out of this is one of those bottomless bag jokes, and Stone getting mad at them when finding out that they called a taxi to pick them up. It's amusing, but I'm glad that they didn't interrupt the main story too much with this.
Hey, hands off the suit, people. You know, I was voted best supporting actor on the internet.
The controversial three-parter that broke many hearts. Tommy receives a letter from Kimberly, saying that she's met someone else and that she's breaking up with him. To cheer him up, his friends take him on a snowboarding vacation, where they meet a famous snowboarder named Heather. She seems to really hit it off with Tommy, but their relationship gets complicated when his ranger duties start getting in the way. So yes, this is the infamous storyline that ended the relationship between Tommy and Kimberly. It is one of the most hated plot points in all of Power Rangers, and seems to have only been created to allow the writers to push a Tommy-Catherine relationship. And I can't say that I like it all too much myself. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not completely against the idea of Tommy and Kim breaking up. There are a few mitigating factors that help to make this plausible. The long distance between them, the fact that not many teenage relationships last into adulthood, and outside of the narrative, Amy Jo Johnson's reluctance to return. Now, my issue is more with the execution of the idea, and it all comes down to that damn letter. It is so insulting in many different ways. First of all, it happens at the very beginning of part 1, meaning that right out of the gate, we're smacked in the face with the knowledge that two characters we've come to care a lot about over the years are no longer an item. You need to ease us into that sort of thing, not treat it like ripping off a band-aid. Secondly, the letter is written in just the most abhorrent manner, with Kim referring to Tommy as her best friend and like a brother. Really? After everything you've been through together, he's only like a brother? How many times have you kissed your brother on the lips like that? This is just awful. It couldn't have been any worse if all she wrote was, "Hi guys, missing you loads. Oh, by the way, Tommy, I've met someone else out here, so I guess we're no longer together. Thanks, bye." What a load of crock. The only good thing to come out of this is JDF's acting. He does a fantastic job in conveying Tommy's conflicted emotions. The heartache he feels after reading that stupid letter, the brave face he tries to put on to his friends, and the uncertainty over his new feelings for Heather. And let's get into that. A fair amount of this three-parter takes place in the snowy mountains above Angel Grove, which feels like more of an excuse for the producers to take everyone on a snowboarding holiday and get some exciting snowboarding spots. Whilst there, Tommy meets a famous snowboarder named Heather, and fun fact, she's played by Sarah Brown, who at the time was better known for playing Caitlin Starr on VR Troopers, another Saban-related superhero show. We see the two of them getting along rather well, but Tommy is clearly still reeling from the breakup. Things are complicated even further when he has to keep leaving her due to his duties as a ranger, including during a candlelit dinner that Kat sets up for them. I think this is the first time in this series that we see the common difficulty of maintaining relationships whilst being a superhero. We never really gave it that much thought because, well, outside of Tommy and Kim, the most substantial relationship we've seen was between Zach and Angela, and that was played more for laughs. We don't immediately see Tommy and Kat become an item, but we do start to hint that there may be something there. Kat was one of the driving forces behind trying to make Tommy happy, and I think he is starting to see how much she cares about him. I do think they make for a nice couple, it's just a shame that it had to come about because of a horribly written letter. Oh right, this is a Power Rangers show, isn't it? What else is happening? Well, in the first half, the Rangers had to fight a monster named RoboCupid, who was causing everyone to fall in love with machines. This led to some humorous moments like Ernie making out with a blender, Bulk and Skull fighting over their patrol bike, and Lieutenant Stone bringing flowers to an arcade machine. I especially love his reaction when the spell is broken. Don't get fresh with me, Miss Pac-Man. The second half has them fighting another monster named Defoliator, who is causing a massive heatwave throughout the city, including up in the mountains. I like that it's two separate ploys that the Rangers have to deal with in this multi-parter. It helps to show that life still goes on, no matter how you may be feeling, and ties in with Tommy's story of him constantly abandoning Heather to help his friends save the world. Other than the brief love triangle with their motorcycle, Bulk and Skull are put in charge of looking after Lieutenant Stone's prized garden, ahead of a judging panel arriving later that day. Unfortunately, the heatwave causes all of his plants to wither and die. Rather than just explaining this to the lieutenant, the duo replace all of his flowers with artificial ones, which causes him to be disqualified by the judges. This seems particularly unfair on all accounts. I mean, surely all the other flowers in the competition must have died as well. If they haven't, there needs to be an investigation to what kind of fertilizer they're using or something. Our conflicted Red Ranger begins a spiritual journey. Mondo's latest creation proves to be the Ranger's toughest challenge yet, as it severely damages the Zeo Megazord. A new Zord is introduced to fight him, but Tommy is having difficulty controlling it as his mind is troubled by his confusing dreams. While not billed as a four-parter, this episode begins a story arc for the Red Ranger, one that carries over from the previous season and involves the Arrowhead that he received during his Zeo quest. There are very heavy Native American influences running throughout these episodes, and like last time, it does feel like they're playing on old stereotypes about the culture, such as them having mystical powers and giving vague advice. We do get to see Frank Salcedo again, this time playing a character named Sam Trueheart, presumably a descendant of his previous character, True of Heart. Naturally, he helps to guide Tommy on his journey to discover what's been troubling him, and recommends seeking out arrowheads in the desert. It's a bit tricky describing this plot in separate episodes, so please bear with me and hopefully it will all make sense in the end. Thank goodness the Ranger stuff is much more straightforward. A new monster named Main Drain has been causing power surges throughout the city. When the Rangers try to confront it, it completely wrecks the Zeo Megazord, causing it massive damage and even breaking its Zeo Saber. There's also a funny little bit where King Mondo feigns surrender, even tying a white flag to his staff, which the Rangers do sort of fall for like the idiots they are. With the Megazord out of commission for a few days, Billy and Zordon reveal a brand new Zord, the Red Battle Zord, which is designed to be piloted by Tommy alone. Unfortunately, because Billy designed it to be controlled similarly to the Alien Rangers' Battle Borgs, this means that Tommy must have a clear and focused mind when using it. He struggles with it at first, even setting himself falling off a cliff and being buried in rubble. But a vision from Sam helps him to recognize that the Battle Zord isn't simply a vehicle, but rather an extension of himself, and he gets the hang of it. It's a heck of a slugger, this Zord, going straight in on the monster with jabs and punches before finishing it off with the Gatling blasters on its arms. I love the close-up shots of the pistons working as it throws haymakers at its foes. Not surprisingly, its design is influenced by professional boxers, with even the Zeo emblem designed to look like a championship belt around its waist. This is a pretty cool Zord. Elsewhere, Bulk and Skull are attempting to sell enough raffle tickets in order to win a trip to Hawaii, but they keep losing out on sales thanks to a guy called Delmar. They eventually catch up with him, only to find out that he is in fact the son of the chief of police, This guy just rubs me the wrong way. Not only can't Bulk and Skull mess with him, but even swindles the two into buying more tickets from him. And look at the way he's dressed. Even season 1 Buddy would beat the snot out of this Urkel-looking weirdo. The episode ends with Tommy returning to the desert where he last saw Sam, and while searching, he encounters a mysterious man on horseback. Get ready for a fight bigger than George Foreman versus Muhammad Ali. As Tommy continues to follow the mysterious stranger, Adam signs up for boxing lessons, but when he is captured by Prince Sprocket, Tommy will have to put his quest on hold to rescue him and face off against Sprocket's prized pugilist, Punch-a-Bunch. It does make sense that once you introduce a boxing-themed Zord, you'd have it go up against a boxing-themed monster, and the fights between them are rather thrilling. While we're used to seeing slower attacks with sparks and explosions, here it's a lot faster paced, and every blow feels like it has some real weight behind it. But of course, being Power Rangers, it has to remind you just how silly it can get, as the later bout has them battling inside a giant ring. Punch-a-Bunch even gets a handy upgrade with some spiked gauntlets. It's really fun seeing Tommy clobber a monster like this. It's just a shame that it came at the expense of Adam's story. He hasn't really gotten that much this season. Seeing him learn a new discipline to evolve his own fighting style could have been very interesting, but the most we see him do is a few jump rope exercises while Bulk and Skull get tied up in theirs. He's then quickly sidelined for the rest of the episode. It is rather disappointing. Tommy does eventually manage to catch up with the mysterious person, saving him from falling off a cliff. He discovers that he has the other half of the Arrowhead, and in a shocking revelation, the stranger identifies himself as David Trueheart, and that he is also Tommy's brother. Okay, this kinda looks like when both players select the same character in a fighting game. Tommy starts getting to know his newly found brother David, and learns that the now completed Arrowhead contains a mysterious power. Wanting that power for himself, Mondo has David captured and demands that Tommy hands over the Arrowhead in exchange for his brother's safety. So it's in this episode that we learn that both Tommy and David were adopted by different families. We never learn anything about their biological parents, sadly, but the revelation that Tommy was adopted is quite a surprise, though we never actually get to meet his adoptive parents either. We don't get to learn that much about David before he's captured, other than he lived on a reservation his entire life, and that he studied martial arts just like his brother. We get to see the two of them spar for a bit, but David runs off after being embarrassed by Tommy, leading to his capture. One wonders why he doesn't just use his mystical Native American powers to escape his prison, but we'll chalk that up to Power Rangers playing fast and loose with the culture. This is the same show that keeps on drumming up new forms of transportation for the heroes, even though they can simply teleport anywhere. In addition to capturing David, Mondo also sends down a monster called Maceface, which the Rangers try to deal with in both the Red Battlezord and the repaired Zeo Megazord, the first time we see both Zords in action together. They also attempt to form a new configuration with them, but with Tommy's mind distracted, they're unable to make the connection, and the monster just wails on the two Zords, bouncing back and forth between them like a bizarre game of Pong. Our Bulk and Skull entertainment for this episode has them trying to find out more information on Tommy's brother, believing that he may be faking his familiarity. That is kind of nice of them watching out for Tommy like that. This is abandoned rather quickly though, as they realize that they forgot to feed Rito and Goldar, and the two of them have escaped their garage. They manage to reunite with them in the end credits, but I am disappointed that they didn't get to interact with David or the Rangers in this episode. It seems like they're drifting further and further apart. Also, how do Bulk and Skull know Rito and Goldar's names when even they don't know who they are? I know they've met them a few times over the years, but usually they end up fainting or running away before exchanging details. Seeing no other option, Tommy meets with King Mondo, the first time we've seen the latter in American footage. He reluctantly hands over the Arrowhead and hopes that Mondo will hold up his end of the bargain and release his brother. Of course he was never going to do that. What did you think was going to happen, Tommy? With the Arrowhead in his possession, King Mondo plans on using it to unlock ancient powers, which he will use to conquer the Earth. The Rangers will have to work fast in order to retrieve the Arrowhead and rescue Tommy's brother from an evil spirit named Autochthon. The conclusion to this 4-part saga is a little rushed at times, but still delivers some good moments. Chief among them is when the Rangers rescue David. He becomes so confrontational with the Red Ranger, insisting that they go back, worried that his brother might be in danger. To calm his fears, Tommy does something really big and reveals his secret identity to him. It's a huge moment, and a rather touching one between these two brothers. The Rangers are able to get the Arrowhead back disgustingly easy, just taking it back with no real issue. And they are able to deal with the two monsters by completing the formation of the Zeo Mega Battlezord, where the two Zords combine together very much like the original Mega Dragon Zord. It looks damn impressive, and I've always loved combining the toy versions of these together. You can tell I really like the toys from this series. Though now I've only just realized that the Red Battle Zord not only has a face on the back of its head, but that its head is also hollow. So where is Tommy even sitting inside that thing? Is he pushed right up against the visor? I know the cockpits are small this season, but this is ridiculous. After all is said and done, the Arrowhead is split in half again, and the two brothers promise to stay in touch and hang out more. Well, for one more episode at least. As clunky as it could get sometimes, this was a great set of episodes. It gave us a deeper storyline than we've been used to, and gave Tommy some great character development. It was also great to see him acting alongside David, who was played by JDF's real-life brother, Eric. It is shockingly uncanny how much the two of them look like each other. They even have the same cadences in their voices. You could close your eyes and have real difficulty telling them apart.
I was adopted by Sam Trueheart. I've lived on a reservation all my life.
Well, I was adopted too. But my parents never said anything about a brother.
They probably didn't know about me.
Why didn't you just tell me? I mean, why did you make me go through a vision quest to find you?
We had to make sure you were my brother. We share a great responsibility.
It would also be very remiss of me if I didn't mention that Eric sadly passed away in 2001 at the age of 29. It is really cool that the two of them got to work together on the series, and they wouldn't be the last pair of siblings to work on the show together. But that's a story for another time. Oh, and Bulk and Skull this episode are given a psychological exam, where Lieutenant Stone shows them a series of ink blotches and they identify each of them as monsters, including the shout out to the putties. They would have failed the test anywhere else, but because they live in Angel Grove, where monsters are practically a common occurrence, that makes them the perfect officers for the job. Take the wins where you can get them, boys. I'm sure next episode you'll be punished for just breathing the wrong way.
Is this the interface system?
Yeah, unfortunately you can't use it.
Finally, Bulk and Skull are getting the respect they deserve. Look, they've been given their own statues. Wait a minute. Rocky meets a blind karate student, but is having trouble getting her to trust him. Meanwhile, King Mondo plans a little subterfuge by getting his monster, Defector, to gain the Rangers' trust and lure them into a trap. Okay, exactly how dumb do the Rangers have to be to fall for something like this? His name is literally Defector. He couldn't sound any more suspicious if he was called I'm innocent, I promise. I think my main problem comes from just how obviously predictable the story ends up being. I mean, sure, I wasn't expecting some kind of wild twist from this episode, even though they definitely teased it a couple of times here, but I felt like we were just waiting for the inevitable turn without any kind of suspense, and then it plays out so dramatically, with Rocky feeling like he suffered a deep betrayal. And I don't buy any of this. It's just dumb. The only interesting thing here is that Rocky gets to use the defender wheel, saying that this whole situation was his fault. But it wasn't really. The other Rangers were just as much to blame as he was. Maybe he was just feeling this way because of his situation with Penny, the blind karate student. I honestly thought this was going to turn out somewhat differently to what we ended up getting. Though of course we see Penny being a great role model and showing that her loss of vision doesn't make her any less different than anyone else. Typical sort of thing for the show. However, her first couple of encounters with Rocky and his friends has her acting more defensively, and saying that she doesn't need their help. We get that Rocky would understand how some blind people don't want to feel like a charity case, which is still a good enough lesson to learn, but I almost expected Penny to learn a lesson too, that some people aren't helping her because of a handicap, but simply out of the kindness of their hearts. That could have put an interesting spin on this kind of story. Not that this was a bad story, I just thought there was potential for something more. Bulk and Skull are all about the visual humour this time, as they try to avoid detection from Lieutenant Stone so they can pass an undercover test. This sees them posing as hot dog vendors, statues in the park, and eventually two ladies being hit on by an unaware lieutenant. I've got no doubts that these two would easily pass this test if Skull hadn't ruined it for them. They've had so much practice over the years with the many costumes that they've come up with. I've also got to admire Lieutenant Stone's confidence in chatting up two ladies at once, even if it did end up with him being embarrassed. Here is an episode that is too good for school. I need a girlfriend. While studying late at night at the school, Adam watches an old horror film on TV and ends up falling asleep. He dreams that the world has fallen to the Machine Empire, and in order to save it, he must journey through a colourless world where many of his friends are not what they seem. This is just good old-fashioned cheesy fun, and a loving tribute to classic horror movies. Everything has this really great old-school vibe to it, from the framing and cinematography, to the eerie theremin music, to the majority of the episode being filmed in black and white. I love how they transformed a lot of their regular sets to fit the horror theme. You can easily tell which ones they use, like the regular caves and the juice bar, but the effort put in to really change up the look is impressive. It's a lot more than just simply putting up a couple of extra props here and there. They really went all out for this. I can also imagine that many of the cast members enjoyed going a little extra with their performances, and there are quite a lot of fun ones, like Tommy as a vampire, Lieutenant Stone as a burgermeister, Skull as a professor with an exaggerated lisp, and fittingly Billy as a mad scientist, complete with Alpha as his Igor. I love the false eyes they stuck on his visor, that's a nice touch. They even gave Zordon the full Wizard of Oz treatment, with fire and everything. Oh, and of course Catherine is a witch that turns into a cat. What else would she be? There is some traditional Power Rangers action, as Adam chooses Tommy to fight a monster, Drill Master, and another big surprise when Rita and Zed show up. The fact that it was all a dream at the end would normally be a massive turnoff for most people, but this was so silly and goofy that I don't think anybody really cares about that. And it's not like they're raising an entire season or anything. One interesting note is that this episode was dedicated to a young fan with a terminal illness. She got to visit the set when the episode was being filmed, but sadly passed away before it made it to air. I really don't have anything bad to say here. This is just a good time, and you don't need any cheap jump scares to make it entertaining. God, can you imagine Tarantino directing a Power Rangers episode? It'd probably be incredibly bloody, and have an awful lot of feet. There's a dance at the youth center where everyone has to donate a toy to get in. Prince Sprocket begs his parents for a new toy, and like the responsible parents they are, they give him one in the form of a monster, Gugelheimer the Toy Robot. Yes, that is seriously his name, though I don't think it's ever said in the episode. It's a fun enough monster, the design really catches your attention, and it has a very childlike mentality to it with a little touch of Jerry Lewis in its voice as well.
Nice try! Now we're gonna play by my rules, hey!
Actually, looking at it again, I wonder if this inspired a certain horror game series, in which case I hate it for bringing this evil into our world. Its main role here is so that the Rangers can introduce a new weapon, the Zeo Cannon. How about that? They get a new Power Blaster and Power Cannon in the same season. It's fine, I guess. I don't know, I've always preferred it when they combine their weapons together to create a bigger one. Just like the Zords. It does have a nice design though. Honestly, the Ranger stuff is just standard fare. The real story is happening with Bulk and Skull. Lieutenant Stone introduces them to a new cadet, Connie, who happens to be the daughter of the police chief, which means that this guy is her brother. You poor thing. Bulk is immediately smitten with her, and tries to figure out ways to win her over. We see him going to the Rangers for advice, but he overinterprets it, approaching Connie as a sophisticated English gentleman and a couple of beatnik poets along with Skull. Their shenanigans cause so much trouble at the police station that the police chief fires Lieutenant Stone for failure to control his subordinates. And in something of a surprising twist, Bulk and Skull quit in protest. Later at the dance, Stone reveals to them that he is opening up a detective agency and wants the two of them to join him. This makes for a nice change in their relationship, especially from the side of Stone. He goes from being so crushed at losing his job thanks to their antics to genuine affection for their loyalty. I believe that's why he asked them to join him in his new venture. It's going to be interesting seeing how this new dynamic works for them now being equals. It sort of. Bulk does get with Connie, who quit her job too, and he learns to stop pretending to be someone else and just be himself. Really, this was Bulk's episode, and the Power Rangers were just in it as side characters. Hang on, this is an episode about Bulk, and he learns not to play a fictionalized version of himself. Oh my god, that title actually makes perfect sense! I thought it was just a goofy pun like all the other ones. Yeah, like this one. Tanya's singing attracts the attention of a famous music producer, who wants to sign her to his record label. As she contemplates how this might affect her future, the other Rangers head off to deal with Mondo's newest monster, Wrecking Ball. This one's a little more simple, as a plot that we've seen a few times already. One of the Rangers is given a life-changing opportunity, but they turn it down to stick with their team. Oh, and education or something like that. Really, this was just an excuse to show off Nakia Baris's singing talent. And yeah, she's really good. Apparently around the same time that she was starring in Power Rangers, Nakia was also recording her first album with her singing group, Divine. But that unfortunately fell through. The episode also features a music video with Tanya singing. This video was also shown separately on Fox Kids in some territories, and was also included on the DVD box set for Zeo. It's a shame that her singing career never took off. I think she would have made a good go of it. There's not really much to say about the Ranger stuff either. Sprocket gets a monster for his birthday, and the Rangers, sans Tanya, go out to fight it, with Tommy beating it in the Red Battlezord. Nothing really worth talking about, so let's check in with Bulk and Skull. They've settled in well to their new office, as part of now Detective Stone's new agency, the Private Eyes Have It. I I love that name. Their first assignment is to investigate possible phony record producers hanging around Ernie's After Hours Club. Naturally, they see Tanya being approached by one and decide to do a little more digging. It's nice to see a new development for these characters, as the junior police stuff was starting to get a bit tired. This feels like more of a natural evolution, as they try to strike out on their own with Detective Stone. It's also crazy to know that the Juice Bar now has an After Hours Club. And it didn't escape my attention that the people who hired Stone's agency are the National Association of Record Companies. I really love this show's naming conventions. This kind of reminds me of a movie I once saw about a kid who learns karate. What was it called? Oh yeah, Sidekicks. While Adam is training for a kung fu tournament, he finds a strange-looking medallion in the woods, and it's revealed that they are cloaking devices used by the Machine Empire to build a secret armada. One of Adam's opponents in the tournament has also found one of the medallions, a returning Sean who is accompanied by his new girlfriend, Veronica? Yeah, you guys remember Veronica, right? She was in Stop the Hate Master from last season. She was the one who didn't want Aisha to join her club because she was too poor. I didn't expect her to show up again, especially seeing as how the characters she had issue with are no longer with the show. Her appearance doesn't amount to much really. She's not even that antagonistic. All she does is act generically smug and hang onto Sean's arm. It's so random bringing her back. Who's next? Billy Stalker from season 2? Sean is a more expected return and completes the trilogy between him and Tanya, greeting her with his trademark pride and arrogance. Like I said, he has one of the cloaking medallions, though I'm not entirely sure that he knows what it does, and he plans on using it in the tournament. However, strangely, he decides not to use it in his match with Adam, choosing instead to fight honorably. Now, I did expect him to learn his lesson and do the right thing, but there's no build-up to this sudden change of heart. No scene where he's given a lecture about there being no honor in cheating, or Veronica telling him to cheat because she only dates winners, or even a look of disappointment from Tanya that makes him change his mind. Nothing. He just does a complete face turn out of nowhere. It just makes his redemption arc feel a little unsatisfying, which is a shame because we don't see him or Veronica again after this episode. Sean makes his peace with Tanya and Adam, and Veronica just disappears into the ether, or off to join Angela somewhere. It could have been nice to have them as recurring antagonists for our main characters, being someone they have to deal with outside of their ranger duties, like early Bulk and Skull were, but less comical. But what are you gonna do? Speaking of which, Bulk and Skull's next assignment is to investigate why the trees in Angel Grove are mysteriously disappearing. They discover one of the medallions in the forest, but are quickly captured by the Cogs and their leader, Admiral Abominator. They are eventually rescued by the Rangers who defeat the monster, and Billy single-handedly takes out the Invisible Armada. Good God, this guy's like Batman and Iron Man rolled into one. Minus the bajillion dollars, obviously. There's simply no stopping him. Bulk and Skull do receive praise from Detective Stone on the job well done, so it's nice that they get some credit for their work. You know, Sean did say that he wanted to become a Power Ranger, and that made me realize something. We're over halfway through the season, and we only have 5 Rangers. Maybe it's time we added one more.
Oh man, you're not gonna believe this. Seems like we have a new Ranger.
A new Ranger?
Oh, I've been waiting all season for this. King Mondo develops a new strategy for defeating the Rangers, keeping them separated with an army of Cogs and his monster Wolfbane. It proves effective and the Rangers are at his mercy, when they are suddenly rescued by a mysterious new hero, the Gold Ranger. I have so been looking forward to this. The Gold Zeo Ranger is hands down my favorite Ranger of all time. Like the previous 6 Rangers before him, both of them Tommy, he has an awesome design. Sleek black and covered in gold armaments, armbands, knee braces, gold trim on his visor, and a super cool chest plate. The guy is decked out like a king. You could even say he was a King Ranger. His appearance is impactful as well, as he arrives in a spaceship that interferes with the electronics of both the Rangers and the machines. His debut scene is also incredible. A hell of an entrance to make. He's got his own theme song and everything. He single-handedly takes down the Cogs and Wolfbane with the aid of his golden power staff that lets him charge right through the grunts and finish off the monsters with some powerful blasts. Oh, but that's not even the best thing about him. One What are some of the coolest designs that we've seen so far for Zords? Dinosaurs, dragons, Godzilla. How about a friggin' pyramid? Yes, the Gold Ranger rides into battle in an honest to Osiris pyramid, called Pyramidas no less. And its finishing move, it literally summons lightning from the skies to strike down its enemies with great vengeance and furious anger. And you will know he is the Lord
when he lays his vengeance upon...
I apologize for my little outburst there. I just really like this Ranger a lot, if you couldn't tell. Anyway, this episode itself is pretty much just a big showcase for our new Ranger, as well as a beginning to a story arc focusing on who he is. For the next several episodes, various characters will be hinted at as possible candidates for the Ranger's identity. In this one, it's Billy that comes across as suspicious, as he goes missing before the Rangers go to fight Wolfbane, and only returns after all the action is finished, saying that he needed to take care of something. There was also a scene earlier where Adam mentions how there are only 5 of the Rangers, and Billy laments that there used to be 6. Just a couple of little seeds to spark our curiosity. I also like that the Rangers aren't quite sure which side the Gold Ranger is on. I mean, it may seem obvious that he's on their side, but this isn't the first time that the Rangers have dealt with a rogue version of their own kind. Isn't it, Tommy? Plus, there's that earlier episode where a monster tried to trick the Rangers into thinking he was good, so I think their hesitation is understandable. But man, this episode was such a rush. It didn't even need Bulk and Skull in it. That's how good it is. It didn't need Bulk and Skull to save it. This Ranger is just so kick-ass. He is just so... No, I'm good. I'll behave. Next episode, please. A bit of a shrinking problem, huh? Yeah, that'll happen in this kind of weather. Tommy and Kat go into the desert to look for specimens for their ecosystem project, but the Machine Empire gets the drop on them, and Sprocket uses his Shrink Ray to turn them into puny Power Rangers. It's a race against time as the other Rangers try to rescue their friends before they end up as tasty tarantula treats. It's episodes like these that really make you appreciate the ingenuity of the crew with their limited budget. They could have just done this whole tiny Ranger plot with close-up shots and green screens, and they do to a certain extent, but to build a large terrarium set and a giant spider puppet for them to work with? Now that's next level dedication. Nowadays they probably would have just CGI'd the whole thing and it wouldn't have looked nearly as good. I do hope they were careful with that real trance though when they simulated that rockfall. Some of them come very close to hitting it. Most of the episode was focused on the shrinking aspect, so the monster, Tarantabot, did feel a bit like an afterthought. A shame really because it does have a neat design and some cool abilities, but it's only here so that the Rangers can show off a new Zord configuration, the Zeo Ultra Zord, where Pyramidas transforms into a giant hulking behemoth and the Zords are housed inside of it, with the Red Metal Zord getting a little piggyback. Seriously, this thing just towers over Tarantabot. You almost feel sorry for him. Bulk and Skull's story actually does tie in with the Ranger's story. In a way, at least. They've been hired by someone to go to a digging site to discover what potentially could be a massive amount of gold. However, it later turns out that what they actually find is iron pyrite, aka fool's gold. But it's what happens at the dig site that is very interesting. Sprocket ends up finding them there and the two naturally run away. Now I reckon they could have taken on that little brat no problem. Bulk manages to get out of the mine, but instead of finding Skull, he runs into the Gold Ranger. After the big battle, Bulk thinks he sees him again, but when he rubs his eyes, the Ranger is gone and all he sees is Skull. Yes, even one member of our favourite duo is being put forward as a candidate for the new hero. Now, doesn't that sound like an interesting prospect? Skull's excuse for going missing is that he simply wanted to get some fresh air. Though personally, I think he just wanted to get some distance from Bulk after he nearly caved his head in with that pickaxe. Jeez, Bulky, watch where you swing that thing. Wait, is the season over already? Well, not exactly. The Rangers are in the youth centre preparing a banquet that looks at how different cultures celebrate the holidays. Mondo doesn't like this festive cheer and has Sprocket use a bias blaster that causes the Rangers to turn on each other and ruin their celebration. So this is another episode that was aired out of order, as it was the last episode of the season to be broadcast, coming in a few days after the actual season finale. Understandably, it was held back until they got closer to the actual Christmas season, but technically it should come in around about here, although for some reason the YouTube channel has it listed right before the final episode. And if you're wondering why I'm spending so much time talking about when it aired, that's because this episode is so boring. It's another Christmas episode where the Rangers don't morph, but they also don't do much of anything, just standing around in one place and bickering with each other. Oh yes, and it's another Rangers are turned against each other plot that we've seen so many times before, and this is far from being one of the better ones. Granted, I hope they would have played more into the whole respecting other people's cultures idea, but it's barely given much attention and respect. Instead, the whole situation is resolved by some random girl singing a song about love and being together, and it's just awful. I like the sweet stuff as much as the next person, but this felt like someone was trying to shove an entire bag of sugar down my throat. It's not as bad as Alpha's Christmas special, but it's a pretty close second. Thank God for Bulk and Skull to give us some much needed fiber in our diet. They're sent out on a mission to track down fruitcakes that have gone missing all over town. They end up following a literal breadcrumb trail that leads them to discovering the largest fruitcake that they have ever seen. And it turns out that this was all the work of Rita and Goldar, who wanted to get the guys a Christmas present. To reiterate myself, thank God for these two, because they saved this from being the worst Christmas special ever. There is one other thing about this episode that kind of sticks in the craw of a certain number of fans. These events are actually being told by an old man as a story to his grandson. When the story is finished, it's revealed that the old man is in fact an elderly Tommy, and that he and Kat have gotten married and had a family together. Now, obviously, there are some fans that are still upset about the writers splitting up Kim and Tommy, and having this come out not too long after that, and pretty much confirming the split and the new pairing is going to upset them a lot more. For me, I've gotten over it, and I'm quite on board with the new pairing of Tomcat, though I personally prefer Hilliver myself. My only real gripe with this is since Tommy was the one who was telling the story, and assuming this was all true, something that actually happened in their past, then to quote an angry Saiyan,
"How did you know about the parts you weren't there for?"
Because, yeah, how did you know what the Machine Empire was doing? Or what Bulk and Skull were up to? Or that they were hiding Goldar and Rito this whole time? Or what Zordon and Alpha were doing? Oh yeah, they were in this episode too, but they couldn't help the Rangers because they couldn't do anything against this kind of hatred. Even though in the season previously there was an episode all about hatred and they were able to do something about it. Sort of. This is just a terribly written episode, and the last Christmas one they would do until Samurai many years later. Still, at least they got better old lady makeup for Catherine this time.
You know, I couldn't agree better. More. At all. Whatever.
Surf's up, dudes! Awesome! Radical! Hang 10!
Wave race! No, wait, that's not surfing. Tommy, Kat, and David are catching some gnarly waves in a surfing contest, but King Mondo decides to be a real kook and sends his monster, Leaky Faucet, to pollute Angel Grove's water supply. The Rangers had better wipe out this cantankerous contaminator before they find themselves caught inside and going over the falls. Honestly, I have no idea. This is a fine enough episode. The surfing aspect is a nice change of pace, even if it is just used as a background setting with no real impact to the story. There is one moment of tension with some of the Rangers being caught in a wave, so at least that's something. It has been a while since a Monster of the Day has been given the spotlight. In this case, it's a returning Leaky Faucet, who appeared in an earlier episode and was the only one who really stood out then. He has a very goofy look to him, combined with a giddy personality. He definitely comes across as a monster who loves what he does, and seems quite formidable as he's able to phase through all of the Rangers' attacks, requiring them to adopt different strategies in order to defeat him. Not bad for a guy who was once quoted as Jason David Frank's favourite villain. This time they hinted at the possibility that David could be the Gold Ranger, as after helping his brother get Kat back to shore, he disappears before the Rangers morph, and only returns just before the competition winner is announced. Now I will actually spoil things here and say that David is not the Gold Ranger, and this was the last time we saw him on the show. That really is a shame because David is a good character, and it really would have been cool to see him working with his brother and the rest of the cast more often. I feel like there's a story here that could have been expanded on a bit more. Maybe him trying to impress his brother, or becoming jealous of how good he is, or his relationship with Kat, and that leading them into trouble on missions or something like that. Well, maybe the comic books can create something for him. As for Bulk and Skull, they're only here for a cup of coffee. No, seriously, that is what they are doing. Literally making a cup of coffee for Detective Stone. Remember how silly we thought it was for people to subscribe to things by mail back in the 90s? Yeah, 30 years later, who's laughing now? Ooh, that'll be a neat idea for a comic book. Power Rangers vs. Freddy Krueger. Oh damn, someone beat me to it. Mondo has been wearing down the Rangers with constant cog attacks. They've become so overworked and tired that Mondo finally sends down his Somnibot monster to put the Rangers to sleep permanently. Now I am going to say that I'm let down by this episode a little bit, but that's only because I can't help but associate it with a similar plot from last season, with Kimberly also being overexerted in a different shade of pink. Sure, there are other mitigating circumstances that made that a completely different scenario, but I don't know. I just couldn't help but make that comparison. I'll try not to do this too often because for a show that's lasted as long as Power Rangers, there are bound to be a few repeat stories used over and over again. I just couldn't help but notice it this time because of how closely it related to a more popular episode. It would be like if Mondo decided to try and steal their powers using a candle. So with that said, this episode is alright. Seeing the Rangers become exhausted before the work that they do is at first surprising, since they are usually so peppy and can do all their schoolwork, homework, a dozen clubs and social events, and fight the baddies with no problem at all. But it is nice that the writing has started to make these characters feel a lot more human and relatable. I seem to find the monsters with bigger eyes more interesting, which is probably why I like Somnibot's first design more than her second. That and the nightcap on her head, her tired looking face, and her half yawning voice making her somewhat adorable. She loses all her charm with her second form and just becomes a bit more generic, although she is able to even affect the Gold Ranger, so fair trade I guess. Speaking of which, Billy is once again suspected of being the Gold Ranger. He keeps disappearing from the power chamber every time Goldie shows up, and only returns after the battle is finished, with the same excuse of he was working on something. Now the Rangers do confront him on this, and Rocky even straight up calls him out on being the Gold Ranger, but Billy simply brushes it off, saying that if he was, he wouldn't keep it a secret from them. It is nice to see the Rangers now actively trying to figure out who the Gold Ranger is, but they are pretty quick to dismiss Billy just because he says, "No, I'm not." Well, Rocky still has his suspicions, and if it turns out that Billy isn't the Gold Ranger, spoiler alert, he isn't, then why is he being so secretive? He says he's been working on a project, but keeps making excuses to not talk about it. What could he be working on? I bet it's just an excuse to go on more dates. This guy's such a ladies' man, he makes the Fonz look celibate. Bulk and Skull's assignment this time is to guard a safe containing something very valuable to their client. They almost let a crafty thief walk away with it, but they were able to catch up with him not long after. And it turns out that the valuable item that they were looking after was simply a recipe for egg salad sandwiches. Even Stone can't believe that that's what they wasted their time and resources protecting. Man, the competition at the annual fete must be pretty cutthroat.
Sorry I'm late, I was just, I forgot my line.
With all these extreme sports that the Rangers do, I'm surprised they never made a video game out of it. Yes, there was their Zero racing game, but that was just a cheap Mario Kart clone. The Gold Ranger lands on Earth in order to make some repairs to Pyramidas, but as the other Rangers try to ask him who he is, they're surprised by a bounty hunter named Borax, who intends to take the Gold Ranger as his prize. I'm sorry, this isn't a particularly interesting episode. Or rather, the villain isn't that particularly interesting. He's just some random bounty hunter that shows up, and granted, he does cause some damage to the Gold Ranger, but he's taken out by the other Rangers fairly easily. They didn't even need any of the other Zords except the Megazord, and he's supposed to be a supreme bounty hunter? More like a supreme letdown. This was just another episode trying to usher forward the mystery of the Gold Ranger, but not in a very engaging way. I do like that the Rangers are being more active in trying to find out his identity, as well as how his powers are connected to theirs. They do manage to find out a couple of things about him that are still rather vague. One, that he knows who Zordon and Alpha are, and two, that he can't reveal his identity to them or else he will lose his powers. We never get an explanation for why that is. Maybe he just has really bad social anxiety? I can relate. The fact that he knows who Zordon and Alpha are leads them to believe that he must be someone that they know. And all eyes once again point to Billy, who again disappeared before all of this went down. Though considering that after he left, the very next scene was of Pyramidas travelling through space while jamming music was blaring out, that makes it even more unlikely that he's the Gold Ranger. Then again, given who Billy is, he probably invented a way that he could be in two places at once. Cloning, super speed, time travel, anything is possible with this guy. An old lady's dog is scared away by Pyramidas' landing, and she hires the detectives to help her find it. It turns out that it was just hiding under the sofa the whole time, and since they already cashed her check, she gets them to do a few chores around her house. Aside from a bit where Bulk and Skull fail to notice some cogs wandering right behind them, and another reminder that Rita and Goldar are still in their service, it was kind of slim pickings for the two this time. So yeah, kind of a lame episode, but with all the clues that we've gathered, surely we can figure out who the Gold Ranger is now, right? It's time to find out who's been hiding behind that mask. The Gold Ranger is pursued by more of the bounty hunters from last time, and ends up crash landing on Alcatraz. With no other choice, he reveals his identity to the Equations, and now they and the Rangers of Earth must find a new host for the Gold Ranger powers before they are lost forever. It's all been building up to this. We've got our clues, we've got our candidates, so who exactly is the Gold Ranger? Is it Billy? Skull? David? Sean? The 1991 Denver Broncos? Well, it turns out it's none of them. It's actually this guy, someone whom we've never seen or heard of before. This is such a huge disappointment. All that build-up and intrigue surrounding his identity, and it turns out to be someone completely random. Which makes no sense because all the clues suggested that it was going to be someone that we know. If not one of the current cast members, then maybe someone who was on the show previously. The former Ranger, a previous one-off character. Heck, I'd settle for Dex from Masked Rider. That would have been kind of cool. In fact, the voice of the Gold Ranger in morphed form was done by Brad Hawkins, who had previously played Ryan Steele in VR Troopers, and there were even rumors suggesting that he would have been revealed to be the Gold Ranger as Ryan in some kind of world-merging crossover something or other. I don't know, it's kind of hard to find concrete details on this. But, of course, none of that happened, and instead we got a completely new person. This is Trey of Triforia, a member of a race of peacekeepers called the Triforians. He has this neat little trick of splitting himself into 3 different versions of himself, respectively known as traits of Courage, Wisdom, and Heart. I assume that last one is to avoid copyright issues with Nintendo. It is kind of neat that he actually found identical triplets to play the 3 Treys, that being Tom, Tim, and Ted DeFilippo. But sadly their acting is on par with Dex, very flat and wooden. A complete contrast to when he was morphed, not helped by the fact that the majority of their dialogue is just exposition. Speaking of which, they need someone to carry the Gold Ranger powers whilst they work on reuniting their split body. Naturally, they try passing it on to Billy, but it turns out that his body absorbed a bunch of technical, particle, something or other when the command center exploded, and thus he is unable to receive the gold powers. There may be certain reasons for why Billy wasn't made a Gold Ranger, but we'll get to that later. Fortunately, Tommy has another idea of who they could give the powers to instead. Yeah, I get what you're saying, Tommy. I know exactly who you're thinking of.
It's morphin' time! Get off my sister!
With all this talk about the Gold Ranger, I almost forgot about what's happening with Bulk and Skull. Wait, why are they dressed in their old clothes? Yeah, anyway, Gordon and Rito suddenly want to know where their families are, or if they even have one. So they decide to hire Bulk and Skull to track them down. They end up finding nothing, but then this strange box addressed to the monsters is delivered to the agency. Upon opening it, Bulk and Skull are knocked out, and it turns out to be a message from none other than Rita and Zed, who tell their fallen henchmen that it's time to come home. Wow, it's kind of sad that the comedy subplot has a much better payoff than the big mystery that's been building for several episodes. A beloved character makes his triumphant return. That's right, my friends, Richie is back! As Tommy leads the new Gold Ranger candidate to the power chamber, King Mondo reconstructs a few of his old robots with a special new type of armor. The Rangers can't even make a dent in these new and improved monstrosities, but thankfully Trey leaves them with a gift, a new set of superpowered zords. Alright, let's not beat around the bush any longer. The big story for this episode is the return of the original Red Ranger, Jason, played once again by Austin St. John. The reason for his return is, well, the show wasn't doing particularly well. Zia was struggling in the ratings, so the producers thought that bringing back a popular character would give them a much needed boost. Austin was apparently already in talks to feature in the upcoming Turbo movie, so producer Shuki Levy asked him if he would like to return to the TV show as well, which he accepted, along with a larger pay rise because that was the reason he left the show in the first place. They did a semi-decent job in hiding his identity before the big reveal, but watching it back, it is rather easy to tell who it is by the few shots we get of his face and his distinctive battle cries during a fight. Still, when those shades came off, it was jaw-dropping. Jason was my favorite character as a kid, so I was overjoyed by the fact that he was back. And hey, now the dynamics between him and Tommy are reversed, with Tommy being the Red Ranger leader and Jason as the additional support. Something that they also touch on in a very underrated closing scene. There's a bit of lip service about the peace conference, though no mention of Zack or Trini here, and Jason admits that while it was tough for him to leave the team, he knew they were in good hands with Tommy as the leader, and doesn't want him to feel like he's going to try and take that back from him. It's a great follow-up to the episode, especially considering that he never got a proper goodbye this time. It helps to close some of those unresolved issues. It's going to be great seeing him interact with the cast again, old and new. Speaking of new, we also have new toys for the parents to buy for the kids. Mondo coats some of his old monsters in something called neoplutonium armor, which doesn't change anything to them visually, but it does make them a lot more durable. Even the Zeo cannon can't do anything against them. Instead of sending out their current Zords to get trashed, Trey provides the Rangers with the Super Zeo gems. Now they don't fit into a glove that can be used to snap their enemies into dust, but they can do something even more awesome. Summon a bunch of new Zords called the Super Zeo Zords. 5 humanoid Zords modeled after each Ranger's designated shape. And check out that cockpit space. Look at how much room they've got now. You could fit all 5 of them in one Zord easily. While their debut outing is rather brief, especially considering the multi-monster battle going on here, we get to see just how strong they are, as they each take down a monster individually. Except for the girls who team up on one of them because girls aren't as tough as guys? I don't know really. At least Adam got to take down that drill monster from his dream, and them flying away all Red Arrow style is pretty cool. There's even time for some Bulk and Skull shenanigans, or rather Rito and Goldar, as Zed and Rito restore their memories along with their swords and Goldar's wings. They tell Bulk and Skull to take their jobs and shove it, and steal their motorcycle, with the duo following them in Detective Stone's car. However, they soon run out of gas, and are only just able to escape before one of the monsters flattens the car under its foot, much to the absolute dismay of Stone. Goldar and Rito are later picked up by a spinning orb, and presumably will reunite with Zed and Rito in a later episode. And by later, I mean the very next one. Wow, isn't this exciting? Jason is back, and so is Zed and Rita. And the Rangers have another member of the team, and a whole new set of Zords. I wonder what Mondo's reaction to all of this is going to be.
Give me that
Ah, I see he's taking it well. Just exploding with positivity. Frustrated with his constant losses, King Mondo decides to take on the Rangers himself, and unearths a dangerous weapon known as the Damocles Sword. This weapon makes him so powerful that the only way the Rangers can defeat him is with a new Zord combination, the Super Zeo Megazord. It's a pretty good looking Zord as well, with the brightly coloured geometrical shapes standing out well against the black and chrome. And while most Megazords usually have one saber on hand, this baby has 2, that combine into one giant energy blade that slices through their enemies like a hot knife through butter. I love the additional flourish that it makes before their opponent blows up. That just makes it even cooler. But yeah, not to bury the lead, but King Mondo has just been destroyed. The first time a Ranger team has defeated the villain's main leader. That's something you would only expect to see towards the end of the series. I guess that sword didn't help you out as much as you thought it would, huh Mondo? However, Queen Machina reassures the distraught Sprocket, stating that this isn't the first time that Mondo has been defeated, and that he will return stronger than ever. It'll probably just be a slightly higher bitrate with an even bigger price tag. But it looks like the old guard has returned, as Rito and Goldar arrive on the moon, and are reunited with Zed and Rita, who picked them up in an RV. I guess they had to trade in Serpentera for something a little more affordable. Finster is also with them, but no sign of Squat and Babu or any Tengas, Putties, or any other henchmen. It's gonna be really weird seeing them like this.
Daddy, I don't have a headache anymore!
What's interesting about this episode where the main villain is defeated is that it was a Rocky-focused episode. He's feeling a bit despondent because with Jason back, he's worried that he no longer has a place on the team. He's even teased about it by Bulk and Skull, which feels a bit out of character for them. Well, the characters that they've grown into. He becomes so desperate for approval that he tries to take on Mondo all by himself, but the power of the Damocles Sword is enough to handle one wayward Zord at least. Of course, things are patched up by the end, but this was an interesting story to tell. It was great to see the 2 former Red Rangers interacting with each other, even if it was just right at the very end. When Bulk and Skull are not making fun of Rocky, they're lending their services to their latest client, a representative of the Burble Baby Food Foundation, who is offering them $10,000 if they can help her track down the owner's long-lost nephew, who is also the brand's original spokesman, the baby. They initially believe that it's Jason, but it's later revealed to be Ernie, who's offered a lifetime supply worth of baby food, and immediately considers the idea of turning it into smoothies. Like with the other Rangers, it's great to see Jason interacting with Bulk and Skull again. He must feel like nothing has changed a bit around here. And the lady playing the representative seems to be really enjoying her role. Another new establishment? At this rate, Ernie's going to have a monopoly over the entire city. Zed and Rita launch a rocket at the Machine Empire's base, but Rita loses the remote control, and when it arrives, it transforms into a robot known as Louis Kaboom. He immediately takes over as their new leader, but quickly heads down to Earth in search of that remote, creating the monster Tough Tusks to help him. So yeah, for the next few episodes, this is our new main villain, Louis Kaboom. Design-wise, he is very interesting to look at, with a rocket-shaped body, that giant face just under his actual face, and extra details like the rockets on his lapel suggesting some kind of military rank. He also speaks with a heavy Brooklyn accent for some reason. But I'm sorry, two questions just keep bothering me. One, why is he suddenly now in charge? Like, there was literally no fighting back or attempts to arrest him or something. He just shows up, says he's in charge, and other than some protesting from Queen Machina, everyone else just falls in line. And two, how does he even exist in the first place? Did Rita and Zed program him to turn into a monster, or did something in the palace cause him to change upon his arrival? His mere existence is a completely bizarre anomaly. This is such a weird way to introduce a new big bad to the series. The Ranger's story is also a little unusual. As mentioned, Ernie's expanding his empire by opening up a beach club. However, trouble soon arrives when a biker gang, yes, seriously, turns up and causes a ruckus, with their leader telling Ernie to stay off of their territory. Wow, an honest-to-Zordon biker gang. I didn't think this show would be brazen enough to try that cliche. Thankfully, Jason talks to one of the gang members, Emily, and that's enough apparently to change the leader's mind and become a good guy. Well, okay, Jason did sort of protect Emily when Kaboom showed up, but really? The dude does a complete face turn just like that? I mean, on the one hand, it is better than Sean's sudden face turn. There is at least some believability here. But on the other hand, these guys are a biker gang in Los Angeles. They've probably committed a whole bunch of crimes all over the place, and now suddenly they're good guys just because one person talked to them and said what they're doing is wrong? Man, how much easier would it have been if the Rangers tried that tactic more often? I will take over this pathetic little planet. Don't do it, Zed, it's not nice. Oh, okay, let's have a party instead. Have a Nagila, bitches! By the way, Goldar and Rito force Bulk and Skull into helping them search for the missing remote. I suppose this is a bit of payback for the forced servitude they had to endure all season. Even looking at a maid's outfit probably gives them PTSD.
I think this will work.
Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Thank you, Heim.
Well, somebody's causing a bit of a stink. Oh, what do you want from me? They can't all be winners. The youth centre is hosting a fashion show for charity, but Skull accidentally douses one of the models with a very smelly fragrance. This inspires Queen Machina to send down Stenchy, a skunk robot whose stinky scent is bound to leave the Rangers gasping for air. Oh, and also a meteor is heading for Earth. Yeah, while the Rangers are dealing with Peppy the Pewtron over here, who while having an interesting design doesn't really do anything other than create a massive stink, and I mean that literally, the power chamber is tracking what they assume to be a meteor that is heading straight for Earth, along with a garbled message from Trey telling them that they are in grave danger. Don't worry though, as it's not a massive rock that will wipe out all life on the entire planet, but yet another toy that will wipe out your parents' bank account. This is the Warrior Wheel, an autonomous swords that can function without a pilot. It's a scrappy little thing too, as it loves brawling with monsters and can change into a giant wheel which allows the Super Seal Megazord to use it as a bowling wheel to deliver a unique kind of finishing move. It's a fun little addition to the Ranger's arsenal, and the toy was also pretty cute too, even if the arms and the head were a bit disproportionate to the rest of its body. But geez, Trey, couldn't you have given us a heads up on the arrival? Did they just send that thing off and then realize, oh shoot, we forgot to give them a message. Quick, get that one on the video monitor. Don't have the crappy reception. And make sure we're incredibly vague about the situation until after it arrives. Pretty poor planning here. The rest of the episode focuses on the fashion show, and there's not really that much to talk about. Jason is convinced to join in, thinking it will impress Emily. Rocky gets in trouble with the director, Mr. Stenchy.
It is pronounced Stenchois.
And the music for the show sounds like it belongs in a Sonic the Hedgehog level. The nicest part comes from the Bulk and Skull subplot. They've been hired to act as security for the show, and and Skull even has a major part to play in it. Unfortunately, he accidentally causes the lead model to be drenched in a bottle of powerfully strong perfume. Why was there even a full bottle on the stage? You just needed a prop, or you could have just filled it with water or something to weigh it down. You didn't have to actually have anything in it. Skull does apologize to the model, and the scene between them is actually very sweet. He really sounds like a sincere human being instead of a comedic cornball. He does save the day in the end thanks to a comically large can of tomato juice.
Tomato juice!
But I really do like that the writers are treating them more like actual people and not just punchlines. This is really good stuff. There's also a short scene with Rita and Zed's crew, which is just to say that they're still there. Anyway, this was an okay episode. Moving on. And yet another toy for the parents to go bankrupt over. Tanya receives a package from Aisha containing a map of the island where her parents were last seen. It also contains a mysterious key that Louis Kaboom steals and uses to awaken a powerful ancient being named Auric the Conqueror. So Auric is basically this season's equivalent of Ninja, though not quite as cool in my opinion. To be fair, he does have an interesting design, being a tiki head statue that grows and transforms into a giant centurion-like warrior. And despite him having the word conqueror in his name, he has a benevolent and kind personality, always willing to stand against evil and fight for what is good and true, which is why he refuses to obey Louis Kaboom's orders to destroy the Earth. Sprocket puts on the performance pretending to be good, and tells Auric that the Rangers are the bad guys, and for a while it seems to be working, until the Rangers mention Zordon's name, and that seems to be the magic word that gets him to switch sides. I used this joke last time, I didn't think I'd be using it again this soon.
Why did you say that name?
Yeah, I don't really hold out much hope for this guy when he's easily tricked and then persuaded to swap sides with simple words, and to think the Rangers got their Zords out for this nonsense. Oh yeah, this all started with that package Tanya got from Aisha, and it really does feel like the writers only mentioned her because they wanted the message to come from someone that the fans would recognize. It could have just as easily been from Richie. The map that she receives leads her on a mini Indiana Jones-esque adventure, where she discovers her parents trapped behind a wall of fire and slowly being crushed to death. But she's able to save them disgustingly easily, and is reunited with them, also disgustingly easily. Like, I don't think she's mentioned them at all since her debut appearance last season, and now she's suddenly reunited with them in the space of one 20-minute episode? Again, did the writers just go, how do we get the Rangers to find Auric? Oh, that's right, Tanya has missing parents. Let's have them find it, and then have Louis steal it from them, even though he shouldn't know where it is. And have Aisha sends Tanya the key and a map of their location that she randomly happens to have. That way we get Auric on the screen, wrap up a big super important story arc, and mention a popular character all in one episode without any big effort whatsoever. Great job team, let's break for lunch. Unbelievable. The Bulk and Skull stuff is also only mildly amusing. They have to look after Detective Stone's car again, and it ends up disappearing right in front of them, or behind them in this case, because Zed and Rita try using a giant magnet to get Kaboom back, only to get Stone's car instead. I'm starting to see why people thought Rita and Zed were being treated like a joke at this point. They're literally using cartoon logic in their diabolical plans.
We got plenty I didn't think we did before. Oh, see, look, see, yeah, it's increasing.
Oh.
See, when it gets to here, we have enough.
Ugh, that's a terrible name for an episode. Kat and Tanya are putting on a ballet about King Midas, and hire Bulk and Skull to find them some props. They discover a little dog statue that can turn objects into solid gold, but this statue was placed there by Louis Kaboom, and soon starts turning everything to gold, including Jason. Kind of a silly episode that you think would contain a lesson about greed considering its subject matter, but not really. Bulk and Skull do start to get a little bit greedy when they find the dog statue, but we don't see much come from it other than them turning a couple of pennies gold and wearing gold chains around their necks. Hardly anything to it.
I pity the fool who signs a contract with you.
There's also of course the joke of Jason and Adam, and later Bulk and Skull, joining the ballet, which to be fair doesn't play too much into the obvious humour of boys don't do ballet, that's a girls thing. They nip that notion in the bud rather quickly, with a shout out to Patrick Swayze of all people. It plays more into the comedy of the boys being uncoordinated, which at first I thought was also silly since they know martial arts, but it is kind of a different discipline, so it makes sense that they don't become immediate masters of it, unlike Tommy who knows nothing about football and yet somehow becomes the school quarterback within a day. The biggest chunk of the episode is dedicated to the Zord battle, and two major things really bugged me about it. First of all, why wasn't Adam with them at first? I know Zordon held him back to ready the Zeozords, but it just feels like an arbitrary way to keep him off screen because that's what the Sentai footage demands. Couldn't you have turned him into gold like you did with Jason? Secondly, as they try to destroy the gigantified statue, it keeps turning parts of their Zords into gold. All I could really think of at this point is, go behind it! It never actually moves until Jason blasts it with his Zord and the monster within is unleashed. Why are you standing in its target range like a bunch of lemons? Go around! God, sometimes I feel like this planet deserves to be taken over. The only other thing worth noting is that Louis Kaboom declares himself the new king of the Machine Empire and has Machino and Sprocket thrown in the dungeon. I mean, I thought he was already in charge, but I suppose they have to make it official at least. It won't last long though. Also, Zed changes attire.
Go, go, Power Rangers!
Okay, that one is marginally better. Bulk and Skull compete against a rival detective team to solve the case of a mysterious practical joker causing mild mayhem at Angel Grove High. Meanwhile, Queen Machina resorts to desperate measures to get rid of Louis Kaboom, as she calls upon aid from her estranged son and his wife. This episode marks the debut of Prince Gasket, the firstborn, built son of Mondo and Machina, and older brother of Prince Sprocket. He's accompanied by his wife Archerino, whom as the story goes is the daughter of Mondo's mortal enemy, some guy we never hear about again so it's not important, thus resulting in the two of them eloping. With Mondo gone, they've come back to take control of the Machine Empire, but will have to deal with Louis Kaboom first. This is easily resolved as Archerino makes Louis fall in love with her, and she orders him to fight the Rangers directly. Said fight consists of just one Zord battle with Louis putting up a decent showing, even tanking a few of their finishing moves, until they bust out the Ultra Zord and Kaboom goes kaboom, leaving Gasket and Archerino as our new main villains. For now at least, we only have like 10 episodes left. As for the side plot, it's just fun and silly. The Rangers and several other students and teachers have practical jokes played on them. Mostly harmless, though the one where Rocky gets a load of ketchup dumped on his chips is pretty irritating. Fortunately, Bulk and Skull offer to take up the case, but they're almost usurped by a new pair of detectives named Humphrey and Bogart. Yes, seriously. What kind of parent names their kid Bogart? Well, I suppose it is a little less on the nose than just calling them Sherlock and Holmes. Anyway, they point the finger at new kid Robert, but thanks to Catherine and Tanya, it's revealed that Nancy and Drew here are the real pranksters, who staged the whole thing in an attempt to usurp Bulk and Skull as the top detectives in town. It's kind of a shame that they don't appear again after this episode, because it would be kind of neat to have a rival team for our favourite duo. Really reflect how their alignment has changed over the course of the series. Overall, this was a fine enough episode, and I'm looking forward to seeing what our new villains have planned for the Rangers. Oh, and Zed and Rita are just kicking around, not doing much.
French fry.
Oh.
Actually, I was just wondering that myself. He was barely in the last episode. Tommy mysteriously disappears while riding a jet bike, and the Rangers try to find out where he's gone. But their search is unfortunately hampered when Prince Gasket unleashes the cruel chrome monster on them. This episode actually leads into a big two-part story coming up next, so I don't really have that much to say here. I mean, the episode itself is alright. It's nice to see Jason stepping up as leader once again in Tommy's absence, and for a completely new lineup as well. The monster is fine, but doesn't really stand out too much from the others. We get a bit of a sibling rivalry dynamic between Princes Gasket and Sprocket, Golda and Rita are fixing the camper van's engine, and Bulk and Skull's plot is another something happens to something belonging to Detective Stonetail, which does at least end well for them this time. Really the most interesting stuff happens right at the end when they are able to figure out that Tommy is being held in another dimension and that someone is altering his brain activity. The final shot shows the Red Ranger in some sort of device, clearly in a lot of pain, as something is changing him for the worse. A two-parter where the real heroes get to shine. Tommy is brainwashed into thinking that he is the king of the Machine Empire. Jason is lured into a trap and forced to fight his friend, but the Rangers receive some help from a very unexpected source. Completing the story set up by the previous episode, this was a really fun two-parter, even if it did feature a few familiar elements. I mean, come on, this isn't the first time we've seen a brainwashed Tommy fighting against Jason in an interdimensional arena. The suits and the decor may look different, but the song and dance is pretty much the same. And of course, Tommy's return to normal thanks to the power of love. The story goes more or less how you imagine it would, but at least we get to see a few old monster costumes and Jason beating a monster single-handedly, one infused with the Red Ranger's powers no less. The real interesting parts come from the unexpected help that they get. As the Moon crew watches the arena fight unfold, Zed comes to the realization that if Gasket succeeds in destroying the Rangers, he will be the one to take over the Earth, while they will be stuck on the Moon with nothing, leading him to the horrifying conclusion that they have no choice but to help the Power Rangers. A notion so awful it causes Rita to faint. Using the device that Finster has been working on, they succeed in teleporting the remaining Rangers to the arena. It's nice to see these guys finally doing something for once other than providing mild comic relief. The sheer disgust that Zed has when realizing what must be done is hilarious. I really appreciate the physical humor they put into his mannerisms. Zed and Rita may have gotten them in, but how exactly do the Rangers get out? Well, that salvation comes from the show's real heroes, Bulk and Skull.
Us?
They fall into the same trap that Jason did and wind up in a prison cell with an alien warrior named Tritor, who incidentally is played by Koichi Sakamoto, a stunt performer who has worked on both Power Rangers and Super Sentai, so quite a high caliber ally they've got there. The three of them work together to escape their cell and destroy the shield generator, preventing them and the Rangers from leaving the planet. As far as I recall, this is the first time that Bulk and Skull have actively participated in a fight against the bad guys, and they end up being pretty competent at it. While they're certainly not trained martial artists like the Rangers, their slapstick style of fighting proves to be rather effective against the cogs. It's great to see them have a proper badass moment in the show, and it's especially funny when you realize that they're doing all the hard work fending off the goons, while the trained stunt fighter just mainly growls and waves his arms in the air. Still, he is gracious enough to make the two of them legends on his home planet of Horath, even if no one on Earth believes the stories of their heroic exploits. Don't worry lads, you're still heroes to us. Anyone else getting the sense of deja vu here? Prince Gasket uses a magical crystal to cause the events of the day to repeat itself. However, Tommy seems to be the only one who notices this, and leads the Rangers to the crystal, which is being protected by Protectron. Really scraping the bottom of the barrel for those names, aren't you? Another episode with time manipulating shenanigans, this time inspired by time loop stories like Groundhog Day. It's very predictable and just gives the producers an excuse to use the same footage over and over again. Power Rangers reusing old footage? Surely you jest. They do at least make it tie in with current events, as the reason Tommy is able to detect the time loop is due to residual effects from the brainwashing he received in the last episode. Though even that is pretty much similar to something that Kat went through when she broke free of Rita's mind control last season. Well, you can't say that this show doesn't promote recycling. There really isn't much else to say here. Protectron doesn't really stand out that much other than having some dapper headwear. The Zord battle is pretty standard, Bulk and Skull are only here for a brief repeating joke, and oh yeah, Miss Appleby shows up in her one and only appearance for the season. But yeah, nothing much to see here, so let's just move on. Anyone else getting the sense of deja vu here? Prince Gasket uses a magical crystal to... Oh, wait, sorry. Let's try that again.
Oh, you already timed to shoot?
That's better. Hey, 200 episodes. Detective Stone hosts a whodunit murder mystery party for charity, but one by one the Rangers start disappearing, leaving Catherine all alone to face the wrath of Archerina. Another episode where I'm sure the cast had a lot of fun dressing up for the day. A few of them are even relishing the chance to get into character, although Rocky doesn't seem too thrilled about his role.
You see, why do I have to be the butler?
There's also some great lighting and atmosphere here. The crew always seems to do very well at taking these old mansions and manors and creating a dark and spooky environment with them. It is kind of disappointing that while Kat is the main focus for this episode, she doesn't really do much to resolve the issue herself. It looks like they're trying to build a rivalry between her and Archerina, but maybe because there's not that much time left in the season, they're not really able to follow through with it. She just gets whipped by her and a monster, Nukifier, until Auric and the other Rangers show up to help her. Yeah, I bet you forgot that Auric was still a thing this season. He even gets to deliver the finishing blow to the monster. Because this was his story all this time? Wouldn't it make Catherine feel like a bit player in an episode where she was the central figure? Bulk and Skull are here too, and their main contribution is inadvertently stopping Jason from falling into the same trap as the others. Again, real shame because a spooky mansion seems like the perfect place for some Bulk and Skull... mishaps? Shenanigans? Ooh, Bulk and Skullduggery. No, on second thoughts, maybe not that one.
One thing, Lieutenant. He's a detective now, not a lieutenant. Let's go back.
Now I can see why they never did Power Rangers the musical. To prevent Tommy from being able to control the Red Battlezord, Queen Machina casts a spell that causes him and Tanya to sing everything they say. At the same time, Prince Gasket turns one of Detective Stones' fishing lures into the Caterpillar monster and launches a full-scale invasion on Angel Grove. So this is very well known as the episode where Tommy and Tanya sing the majority of their lines. A very goofy concept and what I imagine must have been quite the odd sensation for the actors involved. Nakia sounds like she's gonna blow out her lungs any second. And JDF just sounds like he's having a blast chewing the scenery with all the ridiculous lines he has to sing.
We must now go. Zordon must know about the spell we're under.
They even have to sing during the morphing sequence, and it's absolutely hilarious.
Zero Ranger 2, yellow.
Zero Ranger 5, red.
The things these guys have to do sometimes is so bonkers. It almost makes you forget that in this episode, the Rangers are fighting a full-scale invasion. Yeah, forgot about that while you're watching Jean-Val Tommy over here, weren't you? I'm guessing that a lot of these scenes were taken from the end of the Sentai because it looks like the machines are not holding back. There are giant warships floating over the city, Quadra fighters attacking the Zord holding bay, requiring them to put some of their Zords in secure containment. I mean, they are straight up turning entire city blocks to rubble. Oh, sorry, apparently it's the abandoned warehouse district. Like, I get it. You're not gonna say that people actually died in those buildings, but come on, don't be that blatantly obvious. The Zord battle is also intense and bizarre in equal measure. The Caterpillar proves to be a rather formidable foe for the most part. It can wrap itself around the Zords to squeeze them, split into multiple segments when it gets outnumbered, and uses an energy wave to force the Zords to dance uncontrollably. This scene is so wild. It skirts the line between being funny and genuinely terrifying. Again, not helped by the fact that Tommy is going all soprano during all this.
Stop this!
The only real downside is that the ending feels rather rushed. Once Jason shows up in Pyramidas and blows up the monster, that's it, they win. Tommy and Tanya are cured and machines just buzz off. Like, you've got your entire armada here. You have them on the ropes, but one monster is taken out and suddenly you throw in the towel? Either these guys are real wimps, or the Gold Ranger is just that awesome. I know what my money is on. This is probably the most over-the-top, ridiculous episode of the entire season, and we've had quite a few doozies already. It was so insane that I almost forgot to talk about Bulk and Skull's involvement. They're fishing, that's basically it. Sure, they were around for the monster's creation, but aside from one quick joke at the end, they didn't really factor into much. Oh, and King Mondo just shows up again out of nowhere. Yeah, a lot of crazy stuff happening here. By that logic, I guess the next episode will be a pretty quiet one then. Right?
No.
An awesome two-parter that is sadly mired in controversy. The Rangers discover that Billy is aging rapidly, and call on the Equestrians to help them find a solution. Meanwhile, a returning King Mondo unleashes his Cog Changer monster to take control of the Rangers' equipment. But at the same time, Rita and Zed create their own monster, Impersonator, who appears to be invincible to all of their attacks. It looks like this fearsome duo is going to require the actions of 2 Ranger teams. Okay, let's address the controversy first of all. This is the final episode to feature the character of Billy Cranston, and that is because his actor, David Yost, had sadly left the show. Originally it was assumed that this was down to pay disputes, as had been the case with other departing cast members. But a 2010 interview conducted by fan news group No Pink Spandex revealed a darker and more disturbing reason. According to Yost, he received a lot of harassment on the set of the show due to him being gay, with many slurs directed at him from members of the crew, directors, writers, and even producers, but none from his fellow castmates as far as we're aware. This ultimately led to him walking off the set one day and never coming back. If you want to see the full interview, you can easily find it on No Pink Spandex's YouTube channel. I'm not going to mince my words here. This is horrible. It is downright disgusting the way he was treated, especially on the production of a TV show that tried very hard, though not hard enough, to be as inclusive as they could. There is absolutely no excuse for this despicable behavior from those involved. If this happened nowadays, people would be fired for this sort of thing, and rightfully so. You can have your opinions and your beliefs, but that doesn't give you the right to treat others like garbage. Have some respect for your fellow human beings, assholes.
Jesus.
I do apologize for my language and for getting on my soapbox there. I just can't believe that something like this could exist on one of my favorite shows. Of course, due to Yost's departure, this meant that Billy wasn't present for a few episodes, his last on-screen appearance being in the King for a Day two-parter, and his absence since then was often given a very hand-wavy explanation. To write him off properly, a story was created where Billy suddenly started to age rapidly, a side effect that came from the device that he used to turn himself back to normal last season. Why it's only affecting him now is something that is never explained. They try all sorts of ways to return him to normal again, even using special water brought from Aquitar, but it doesn't seem to be enough. The Equations decide to take him back to Aquitar for further treatment, which does the job, and Billy is now young again. However, he makes the bold decision to stay on Aquitar, having fallen in love with one of the Equation girls there. Now, I'm not totally against the idea of this story, rather my issue comes with its execution. The actor that they got to play old Billy, who incidentally has one heck of a storied career in his own right, did a good job of what was given to him, but he never managed to get down any of Billy's mannerisms. If you imagine him as somebody else, he'd be totally fine, but he just wasn't Billy. The rest of the story works really well, but that last scene has an all too painfully familiar feel to it. Hiring a bad impersonator, reusing old footage garbled up so you can't notice the awkward dubbing, and giving such a flimsy excuse as to why he's not coming back. Even the tacked on montage during the end credits feels like an insult, knowing what we know now about his departure. Yeah, let's celebrate the best moments of one of the most beloved characters of the show, who was basically chased off the set thanks to your rampant homophobia. And you know what makes this whole thing even more infuriating? It's the fact that this two-parter is actually really good. Yeah, my little tirade there, I almost forgot to talk about the actual episodes. And there is some really good stuff here, as we see two Ranger teams team up for the first time ever on this show. Sure, the actual team up only occurs right at the very end, but it's still really awesome to see that happening. It's helped by the fact that there is an actual Sentai team-up movie between O-Ranger and Kaku Ranger, where most of the episode's footage is lifted from. It's a pretty damn exciting story too, with both enemy factions launching their own monsters against the Rangers. Cogchanger is a little more sneaky, planting gears on the Rangers' vehicles and causing grief with their equipment. He's alright, I suppose, but it's Impersonator that really outshines him. Created from an ugly purse that Cat made in class, she proves to be probably Rita's greatest monster ever, as she's able to absorb any attacks the Rangers throw at her and direct it back at them. She even shrugs off several of their finishing moves, including from their Ultra Zord. Damn, that's impressive. The two end up commandeering both of the Rangers' Megazords and start scrapping with each other. It really is a wild sight to behold. Auric is brought out one last time this season and he tries reasoning with them, until he is literally scared away by Percy here. Yeah, they try to say that he was forced away, but no, this just looks like he backed off like a wimp. Pathetic. No wonder nobody remembers this guy. It all culminates with the two monsters merging together, and the Rangers have to use all of their swords together to defeat them. I kind of think that the bad guys shouldn't have done that, as Percy merging with Cogchanger probably makes her a lot more vulnerable. Still, it's always really epic to see all of the Zords working together to defeat a monster. And as brief as it was, seeing multiple Ranger teams working together is still really cool. We'll get more Ranger team-ups in future seasons. Oh yeah, we should probably check in with Bulk and Skull. It's actually an important time for them, as they're getting ready for an exam so that they can earn their detective's licenses. Man, how far have we come? From the two of them making fun of others for studying, to now actually having to hit the books themselves. They even managed to complete the exam while the monsters are brawling in the Megazords, though they assume that this is all just special conditions that they have to work through. That actually works to their benefit, as while they technically fail the exam, they actually pass due to the extra credit they got for working through a monster attack. I expected nothing less from these two. After all, they are legends on the planet Horath. So yes, despite my frustrations over what happened to David Yost and the Billy character, this was still a great set of episodes. A few hiccups here and there, but otherwise really good. And we only have 2 episodes left, so let's see if we can keep the momentum going. Let's hope that this remake of Lilo and Stitch turns out better than the actual one. Tommy has the opportunity to ask Cat out on a date, but this romantic liaison is soon interrupted by Gasket and Archerina, who make one last-ditch attempt at destroying the Rangers. This episode is intended to write off Gasket and Archerina. They only popped up briefly in the last episode, going into hiding now that King Mondo is back, but thanks to some sly coercion from Sprocket, they have Clank make the two of them grow big, and launch an attack against the Rangers. They end up being quite formidable, but eventually begin to falter once more Zords are called into action. Even then, they don't really get destroyed, as the Ultra Zord's attack just makes them shrink somehow, and they only really disappear for good when Mondo shows up to scold them. They were an interesting and conniving pair when they first showed up, so to see them bow out in this way is a little baffling, especially in an episode that is a lot slower than the previous one, which I actually do appreciate. A little respite before the big finale. We see Tommy now actively trying to pursue a relationship with Kat, making the two of them now an official couple. I'll get into my overall thoughts on this a bit later. Things aren't going well for the detectives, as they have been receiving a lot of bills lately and are in danger of closing down. So Bulk and Skull beg Ernie to give them a job of security during Ernie's luau at the beach club. It's really just an excuse to get them dressed in silly looking outfits and a gag about their face paint not washing off. But the fact that they are willing to go to these lengths to try and help Detective Stone shows another level of loyalty to him. However, the main takeaway from this episode comes near the beginning, as Jason begins to struggle during a cog attack, and still feels weak afterwards. He assumes that he has just been working out too hard, but Zordon confesses to Alpha that he believes that Jason's body is having trouble maintaining control of the Gold Ranger powers. A foreboding statement that may lead to some serious ramifications as we head into the final episode of the season.
Come on!
A big finale in more ways than one. Jason continues to lose strength due to the strain of maintaining the Gold Ranger powers. It becomes clear that if something isn't done soon, then both he and the Gold Ranger powers will cease to exist. This finale isn't quite as big as last season, but it certainly doesn't feel like a standard filler episode either. We get the culmination of a few long-running storylines, most notably that of the Gold Ranger powers. While we only really saw Jason begin to struggle with them in the last couple of episodes, there has been the lingering sense that eventually he would have to return the powers to Trey, which is what happens here, as Zordon and Alpha are able to reunite the Treys into one being and restore the Gold Ranger powers to him by performing a convoluted and dangerous experiment involving bouncing lasers off of planets. They can never do things the easy way, can they? Afterwards, King Mondo and a bunch of cogs randomly show up all giant-sized to take revenge, but instead of calling their Zords, Trey, now voiced again by Brad Hawkins and not any of the Filippo brothers, just makes the Rangers grow instead. Yeah, our final big battle is a giant-sized version of a regular fight. Odd choice, but not unwelcome, though it does remind me of how the Mega Drive fighting game wouldn't allow the Rangers to fight on anything but the bridge stage. This is what you could have had! The fight ends with Tommy and Trey beating down Mondo, and he collapses with his crown symbolically falling off. But it's not the Rangers that ultimately defeats the Machine Empire. Shockingly enough, it's Rita and Zed. They confronted the royal family earlier as both parties were hunting down Jason, and tell them that they no longer fear them as their continuing failures against the Rangers have made them into a joke. This results in a battle between the Cogs and the Tengas, and it ends up being a pretty violent one. Everybody's getting wailed on, Tengas are having feathers ripped off of them, and Cogs are literally being disemboweled like this was Day of the Dead or something. With both forces wiped out, King Mondo demands that Zed and Rita leave the Earth to them, and Zed surprisingly agrees to this, much to the confusion of his wife and subordinates. However, it's revealed to be part of a ruse, and later they offer a parting gift to the machines, in that it is a bomb that blows them up into several parts. As they drive off, Zed triumphantly declares, "We're back!" Yes, spoiler alert for the next season, no they won't be. Bulk and Skull even get an end-of-season wrap-up. Feeling frustrated that Detective Stone doesn't trust them enough to give them a real case despite having earned their certificates, they are contacted by an international government agent who wants to recruit the two of them for an assignment in France. They accept and hand in their resignations to Stone, ending their partnership on amicable terms. And while Stone is furious about the two of them leaving, in private he gives a solemn look, hoping that they will be back one day. Don't worry, Jerome, they will be back sooner than you think. The episode closes on Tommy and Jason having a conversation. Now the latter is no longer a Power Ranger. It's a nice little heart-to-heart with the usual "you'll always be one of us and we'll always be friends" spiel. It ends up with Jason going off with Emily and Tommy going off with Kat. It's a lovely way to close out an episode that, again, might not be as grand as last season, but still holds up really well. Though there is one thing that really confuses me. Where is Rocky in all of this? Yes, he's there for the big battle, but we only see him morphed. His absence explained as him being away at martial arts camp. Couldn't they get Steve Cardenas for this episode? Is this an omen of what happens to him next season? You know what, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's wrap up this video first before I even think about the next one.
Trey!
And with that, we finally reach the end of Power Rangers Zeo. At 50 episodes, it is the third longest season of the show, as well as the last one to reach the 50 mark, and the last to exceed the number of episodes of its Sentai counterpart. I've got to say, this season felt like something of a mixed bag. Whilst the changes to the overall look and feel were, in my mind, fantastic, especially considering that they were ditching a lot of the familiar iconography that the show had had for around 3 years by now, it did feel like the writing had taken a step back a little. Now, don't get me wrong, there were a lot of great episodes, but coming off the heels of Season 3, it didn't quite reach the same heights as maybe it should have done. It was off to a great start, following up on the cliffhanger ending from last time, as well as introducing the new powers and villains in a dramatic manner, and it did have some great concepts and ideas on where to take the main narrative. But the execution felt a little all over the place. I'll get into more specific details when talking about the individual characters. Other than that, everything else still felt the same, but elevated. The fight scenes were very well done, and it's great to see that even though they had the new Sentai footage, they still tried to rely more on their own American-produced fights. There was a greater attempt at telling more mature and nuanced stories, which makes sense since these kids were starting to get older, and as hard as it was before to imagine these actors as teenagers, eventually you would start wondering why they haven't graduated yet. And of course, there's the new suits, the zords, the power chamber, and in my opinion, still the best theme song this show has ever had. It really felt like the show had been taken to the next level. Although I don't know if I can say the same about the villains. Now, again, don't get me wrong, this was a nice change of pace. An army of invading robots is incredibly intimidating, and the steampunk-inspired designs are really cool. But personality-wise, I didn't really get that much from them. Well, most of them anyway. Sprocket is actually rather interesting. At first he just comes across as a spoiled little brat whom Mummy and Daddy always seem to dote on, but over time we do see more of a devious side to him. He regularly steals ideas from other people, mostly Clank, but will reject ownership of it when it inevitably fails. He's also a bit of a crafty manipulator, slyly convincing others to do things that would benefit him or hinder them. With better writing, I definitely could see him taking over the Machine Empire in the wake of his father's destruction, similar to how he did in the Sentai. The rest of the family, however, just isn't really doing it for me. Mondo and Machina behave like a pair of aristocratic snobs, but don't really evolve beyond that. Mondo can have some Z-style tantrums from time to time, but that's about it really. It did get kind of interesting when he was destroyed about 2/3 into the season, but then he just popped up again shortly before the finale. No change to him whatsoever. Louis Kaboom was a somewhat weird replacement for the show's main villain. He felt like a typical monster of the day that somehow got a huge promotion. He wasn't that bad to have around, but I do wish that he was established earlier in the season so that his takeover would have had a bit more weight to it. Gasket and Archerina are also fine, but the fact that they showed up so late in the game meant that we couldn't get much out of them other than a small bit of lore about why they've been MIA for most of the season. Again, kind of wish they just followed the Sentai and made Gasket the older version of Sprocket, though admittedly I don't know where this leaves Archerina in all this. And Clank is nothing more than an accent that only exists to make the monsters grow big. I really wish that we got more of a family dynamic from them. That's what made the previous villains so great. They bickered with each other, laughed at each other, and celebrated together like a weird loving family. They weren't just there to send down a new monster every episode. Speaking of the old villains, man was this a fall from grace. The surprise of them being forced out of the Moon Palace in the opening two-parter was a shocking twist, and a great way to establish the new invading force as a credible threat. And keeping them mostly out of the picture until the end of the Gold Ranger saga built up a lot of anticipation for their return. It's just a shame that they didn't really do much when they did come back, mostly driving around on an empty moon and doing mundane stuff like fixing their camper van or playing games. They basically just became third-rate comic relief characters. Things did start to pick up after a while when they aided the Rangers in rescuing Tommy, and when Rita created the near unstoppable impersonator monster. With them delivering the final blow to the Machine Empire, it felt like the original villains were finally back on top. But as we'll soon learn, that sadly won't be the case. A lot of the bigger storylines this season tended to revolve around Tommy. Makes sense, he is their cash cow after all, might as well milk him for all he's worth. Fortunately, it isn't as egregious as it was in Season 2, at least from what I saw. And unlike past seasons that seemed to want to make him the most perfect human being that has ever existed, we got to see him in moments of vulnerability. He would struggle with school projects, become exhausted over work, have trouble with his love life, discover his Native American roots and a brother he never knew existed, and go through a lot of things that in general really messed with his head. We haven't seen him have this much difficulty since the first season when he was trying to adjust to life in a new city and as a ranger. I think it was the writer's main conduit for showing how hard it can be for teenagers as they make their way into adulthood. Okay, I don't think every young kid went through a vision quest. I wish I could have. It sounds fun. but showing these kinds of struggles through what was perceived as the perfect teenager felt like the best decision, and made Tommy a more well-rounded character. And then of course there is the forced breakup with Kimberly, which, like I said, I'm not against the idea, but the way it was executed was incredibly insulting to both the viewers and the characters. In fact, I can see a way that this could work, and it's so easy to implement. They could try maintaining a long-distance relationship, but Tommy is finding it hard being away from her. Maybe he starts to develop feelings for Kat or Heather, and that makes him feel guilty because of his relationship with Kimberly. Then, towards the end of the story, he has a phone conversation with her, just record Amy Jo literally saying her lines over the phone, where it turns out she's been going through a similar dilemma, and the two of them agree to end the relationship for both their sakes. This would show a high level of maturity from them, and give their characters agency over what happens to their story. This sounds a hell of a lot better than Tommy just receiving a Dear John letter in the first scene of the episode. Even so, what we did get still adds the theme of Tommy struggling this season, and it resulted in some great acting work from JDF, so I can't hate it too much. Of course, the main purpose of breaking up the Tommy-Kim relationship is so that the show could focus on a Tommy-Kat relationship, which I can buy into. After all, both of them were under Rita's mind control for a time, and Kat did seem to harbour an infatuation with him during her time as Rita's pet. And I can say that because she was literally a cat. But that aside, Kat has always been a kind and caring individual to all of her friends, but especially to Tommy. Whenever it looked like he was feeling down or in some kind of trouble, she was always there to check on him and make sure that he was okay. Even with her little crush on him, she wasn't the homewrecker that some fans have made her out to be. Heck, she even set him up on a date with Heather and went the full 9 yards to make it happen, with a candlelit dinner and everything. And when that didn't pan out, she still didn't make a move on him. In fact, in the second to last episode, it was Tommy that instigated things by asking her out. Yes, the placement of the Christmas episode does make the timeline a little bit wibbly-wibbly, but I'm just saying this didn't just happen. For as quickly and as cruelly as they broke up Tomberly, they still took their time in making Hilliver a thing. On second thoughts, maybe Tomcat is better. The downside is that there's sadly not much for Catherine outside of the relationship. Like I said, she's a very kind person and has an almost motherly-like nature to her. We often see her helping out children, if not outright kidnapping them for school projects, and participating in various animal charities and community drives. It looked like they were trying to build some kind of rivalry between her and Archerina, but that only lasted about one episode and was so near the end of the season that there wasn't much to it. A shame, really. Despite being the new girl, Tanya acquitted herself to the franchise incredibly well. It helps that some of the earlier episodes gave her the spotlight so we could get to know her better, but Nakia really helped the character to shine by bringing a lot of energy to the role. She has a confident, cheery personality and is fiercely brave, especially when standing up for herself and her friends, which does feel somewhat out of place from the shy and quiet girl that we were first introduced to back in season 3, but this definitely fits her a lot better. My main problem though is that the stories that revolve around her tend to fizzle out too quickly. Her missing parents were never brought up in the season until 3/4 in, and that episode only served to introduce the character of Auric, who honestly was very underwhelming and easily forgettable. Then after Tanya was reunited with her parents, we never hear from them again. Did they go back to the US? Is she living with them now? Do they know that she's a Power Ranger? And if not, how do they think she found her? There are a lot of really important questions here that sadly go unanswered. Her only other big storyline was her relationship with Sean, and that too ended up blowing by rather quickly. They get together in episode 3, she dumps him by episode 6, and he doesn't even show up again until much later. They really should have held out on this idea a lot better. Give it a few more episodes to establish a relationship, conflict, breakup, and even a redemption arc for Sean if you want. You can even tie it into a rivalry with Adam. Speaking of which, Adam once again sadly gets the short end of the stick. There's no real character development for him, and no big stand-up moments where he shines above the others. He does have episodes where he takes center stage, but even then the focus or the victory would end up passing on to someone else. Heck, even in his dreams where he was the only main character, he still couldn't catch a break, as Tommy is the one that ends up saving the day. The closest he ever got to a win was when he competed in a Kung Fu tournament against Sean. And funny enough, he was the only Ranger who actually competed in a tournament this season. That was something that the Rangers always did like every other episode. Not even Tommy did that. But even then, the focus was mainly on Tanya and Sean. I just think that it would have been so easy to give him some kind of arc for this season. Like, maybe a romantic subplot with Tanya. Yeah, surprise, I'm trying to ship another 2 Rangers together. But I can believably see this happening. They already seem very close. We often see the two of them training and hanging out together, and Tanya has stood up for him on multiple occasions. Plus their contrasting personalities fit together rather well, so Yeah, with a little bit of tweaking, this is a love story that could run parallel to the Tommy and Cat romance. Okay, I promise I'm not going to keep doing this, but seriously, tandem should have been a thing. As for Rocky, he finally got to break out into that goofball role that they've been teasing for the longest time. This meant that he could get into a few more comedic situations than the other Rangers, take a few more pratfalls, be put into silly costumes, and quite often become the butt of the joke. That doesn't mean that they dumbed him down and made him into an idiot. If anything, it made him more well-rounded. It meant that he could stand up more as his own character, and he's now more than just simply the guy who replaced Jason. In fact, while he didn't get that many solo-focused episodes, mainly 2 that had him hit on a couple of girls, he did get one that looked into the fact that he was now on a team with the guy he replaced, concerned with what he now added to the team, and struck out on his own in an attempt to prove himself to them. He is the only one of the Stone Canyon 3 to share any screen time with his predecessor. So this was a good story to look into, and a great way to show how Rocky was his own character and not just a replacement. Like I said though, he didn't get too much focus this season, and the fact that he didn't appear unmorphed in the final episode does now feel like a bad omen for what happens to him next season. But that's for another time. I sadly cannot look back over Billy's trajectory for this season without having an overwhelming sense of dread. With everything that David Yost had been through, I cannot help but wonder if this was the writers trying to slowly phase out his character from the show completely. First, he's no longer a Power Ranger. Then he graduates from school ahead of his classmates. Then they send him off to space. Then they deny him the Gold Ranger powers. If David Yost hadn't walked off the set, I can only imagine what they would have done to his character by the end of the season. But that negativity aside, I do like the direction that they were initially going with him. While he did become a great fighter in his own right, Billy's strengths lie in what he could do to support his team. By stepping down from active ranger duty, he had more time to develop new technology for them, zords, weapons, vehicles, and what have you. And he had the backing and resources of the power chamber, which has to be at least 10 times better than what he could make out of the back of his garage. He also took on something of a commander type role, coming up with different strategies and directing the Rangers on what they needed to do next. If he did continue on with the show, I could easily see him becoming the new leader and possibly even a Red Ranger at some point. It feels so cruel that they teased the possibility of him becoming the Gold Ranger, only to rip away any chance of that ever happening. His departure felt like a huge middle finger to both him and the audience, and we can only imagine what could have happened to him if he stayed on, and didn't have a bunch of homophobic jerkwads dictating his journey. Having rewatched this show multiple times now, Billy has become my absolute favourite character. I find him incredibly relatable, someone who has a lot of intelligence but has very little confidence. I can see a lot of myself in him. Okay, I'm not building flying cars and mind-swapping devices in my garage, but I know what it's like to have a lack of confidence in my own potential. Watching him go from a meek, frightened, and even cowardly young man to a confident, self-assured, ass-kicking soldier is incredibly awe-inspiring. I may have grown up admiring guys like Jason and Tommy for just being cool all the time, but I now appreciate Billy immensely for the evolution his character went through. He was the last of the original Mighty Morphin team to leave, and the second longest serving Ranger on the show, appearing in 196 episodes at the time of his departure. Without going too much into what happened immediately after he left the show, David Yost is now in good spirits, officially coming out as gay in 2010. He's worked on various different projects over the years, is very close friends with former co-star Amy Jo Johnson, and has made appearances at various conventions, including a few Power Morphicons. Unsurprisingly, he turned down an offer to appear for the Power Rangers 20th anniversary special in Megaforce, but he would eventually return to the franchise, playing significant roles in both the 30th anniversary special Once and Always and the show's 30th and final season of the original run, Cosmic Fury, bringing his total number of appearances to 207. Now that is more phenomenal.
Thanks, Billy, for everything.
The Gold Ranger saga took up a huge chunk of the second half of the season, and while the mystery behind his identity was very compelling, the eventual reveal went down like a wet fart. It was salvaged somewhat with the return of Jason, even if it was only done for a quick ratings boost. Still, it was cool to see Jason back on the show. Sure, he didn't go through any major character development or anything like that, but it was just good to see him again, interacting with his old friends and getting to know the new members of the team. He just fits back into the show like a glove. In truthfulness, it would have been nice to see Billy become the Gold Ranger, even if it was only for a short time. But having the OG Red Ranger back is a nice alternative, and at least this time he got to depart the show on his own terms. A much better send-off than he got before. He would later make a couple of appearances for the franchise, including guest starring in the Forever Red episode of Wild Force and the Beast Morphers episode Grid Connection. Outside of the franchise, Austin St. John has worked as a martial arts instructor and a paramedic, served as a healthcare provider in the Middle East, and since 2018 can be seen as a member of the fandom vlog YouTube channel Fanwood. Broken Skull's journey throughout the season is also kind of a mixed bag. The stuff with them making Goldar and Rito their servants doesn't exactly paint them in a good light. I mean, sure, seeing them boss around the same monsters that used to terrorize them is pretty funny, but looking at it from another angle, they're just being dicks to two amnesiacs who were desperate for their help. Also, the fact that they didn't show up that often made the bit kind of pointless. Other than that, it was just back to business as usual, getting involved in various hijinks, often to the chagrin of Lieutenant Stone. In fact, it's Stone's dismissal from the police force that sparks their next big character moments, when they quit the force in protest and join him in setting up his new detective agency, showing a great deal of loyalty and respect to a man that you'd think they'd be more afraid of than anything else. The change to a detective agency did give them a much needed boost, as now we see them trying to run a business and get clients in just so they can keep the lights on. The shenanigans are more or less the same, but now they're on equal footing with Detective Stone, sort of, and that they're actively going out to try and help the people of Angel Grove gives their characters a much needed push in the right direction. The reason for their sudden abrupt departure from the show during the finale is because Saban was toying with the idea of giving the two their own spin-off show, which apparently would have seen them running a hotel. In fact, according to Jason Narvi, the VHS of their best bits, entitled The Good, the Bad and the Stupid, The Misadventures of Bulk and Skull, was released as a test market to gauge fan interest. It didn't sell well, so the spin-off was cancelled and the two would show up again in the new season, with the plotline of their departure just dropped without a word. Disappointing that they never got that spin-off, but hey, at least we get to see these guys in the next season. Just a shame that it's going to be a pretty bad one for them. As you'd expect, this season's monsters were mostly robot-themed, if you couldn't tell. Even with those limitations, we still got some creatively interesting designs and personalities that make these mechanical menaces memorable. For me personally, I enjoyed the likes of Silo for looking like he stepped right out of a Gundam anime, Somnibot for having a fun, sleepy personality before upgrade, Mechaterpillar for the utter chaos it caused for the Rangers by splitting apart and making their zords dance, and Leaky Fawcett for being a really goofy dude. But the best monster, ironically, isn't one of Mondo's robots. Impersonator is the only monster Rita created this season, yet it outshines the others completely by being seemingly impervious to anything the Rangers could dish out, including their finishing moves. It was so powerful, Mondo had to try and temporarily get rid of it. If it didn't combine with a cog changer making it vulnerable, it may have won the battle and defeated the Rangers. Despite this setback, I'm not putting Cog Changer as the worst monster. He's far from that. For me, that would have to be Cruel Chrome. His design isn't particularly interesting, and he doesn't really do that much in his fights with the Rangers. It was actually quite similar to Stenchy, who came in not a few episodes prior. But at least Stenchy had a somewhat interesting design, and come to think of it, their plan of attack was pretty much the same. So he's not even that original. Sorry Chromie, but you're for the scrap heap. When it comes to the worst episode of the season, Yeah, I think this one more than deserves it. I admit, I did consider Rangers of Two Worlds purely for what happened to David Yost. But that wouldn't be fair on the two-parter itself, which honestly was really good, even if Billy's departure story was poorly handled. And I'm sure that some people would want me to put There's No Business Like Snow Business just for breaking up Tommy and Kim. But while I agree that that part was poorly handled, the rest of the three-parter is serviceable enough that I can let it pass. But I just can't get past this. This is the most irritating episode of the lot. It even beats out that boring Christmas episode. I can find at least some reason to watch that, mostly Bulk and Skull finding the biggest fruitcake known to man. But no, I said that For Cryin' Out Loud was going to be my least favorite episode, and I meant it. Next time I watch this season again, I am skipping this episode flat out. And for the best episode this season, yeah, I know, I probably should pick up one of the better written episodes, like King for a Day, or Zero Beginning, or As Good as Gold, or even ones that had such big moments like Jason's return in A Golden Homecoming, or the massive team-up in Rangers of Two Worlds. But I just can't deny my feelings about the power of gold. It is just so good. The mysterious object approaching the planet, Billy lamenting his former Ranger status, the machines implementing the divide and conquer methods to weaken the Rangers, all building up to the arrival of the Gold Ranger. From then on, it's just a massive smackdown as he beats back the cogs and blasts the monster with the fury of God himself, all while his kick-ass theme song plays in the background. It may seem silly, but I always love coming back to this episode for the pure adrenaline rush it gives me. Honorable mentions do go to Bulk Fiction and Instrument of Destruction for giving Bulk and Skull some real human moments. And throw Sam the Weasel in there too. I like the chemistry between Skull and the model. Wait, is this where Spike came from? Oh my god, guys, I think I figured out who Spike's mother is. Oh, yeah, I guess we are quite a ways off from doing that season, aren't we? In case you haven't figured it out by now, Power Rangers Zeo is my absolute favourite season of the entire show. But I certainly wouldn't call it the best season. While the writing continues to be strong, it's not quite on the same level as it was previously. Now, this might be due to growing pains and trying to adapt wholly to a brand new Sentai whilst holding on to what had come previously. It works in some areas like continuing plot threads established in the previous season and allowing the characters to grow up a little and experience new things. But at the same time, there are those older aspects that the show tries to squeeze in but doesn't really have anywhere to put them, so they end up feeling a bit neglected and out of place. This also means that some stories don't get fleshed out enough or get implemented in a way that feels either rushed or badly mishandled. Even so, I still love this season. It is everything I could possibly ask for. The action is dynamic and exciting. The stories are a great mix of camp and drama. The humor is goofy and entertaining. And the music is so uplifting, you'll feel like you've achieved nirvana. There will come better seasons than this one, but there will always be a firm place in my heart for Zeo. With that said, the ratings were still continuing to plummet for the series, not helped by the arrival of such little-known shows like Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z. Clearly, another change was needed in order to keep up pace with the competition, and so it was decided that for the Power Rangers to catch up again, they would need to shift into Turbo. Hi everybody, TeknoBoy here. Thank you so much for watching my video on Power Rangers Zeo. This took like a long time to finally get out, but I wanted to put as much effort into it as I can because, as I've said many times, this is my favorite season and has my favorite Ranger of all time, the Gold Zeo Ranger in it, so I just wanted to make sure that I was getting everything as right as I could and putting out the best work that I possibly could for this. So the next video I'm going to do, or the next video in this series I'm going to do, is going to be on Turbo, obviously. And what I was considering was doing two separate videos for that, one focusing on the film and another focusing on the series. And the reason I want to do that is because I wanted to be able to give the Turbo movie its own spotlight and talk about that rather than just like as a 2-minute segment in another 2-hour plus long video. So let me know if you think that sounds like a good idea, or if I should just stick to doing the one long video. I'm interested to know what you think would be better. Also, give me your thoughts on this video, or the bits you liked, bits you didn't like. Is Zeo a season that you enjoyed yourself, or did you not like it? Do you think that the Crying Baby episode was actually the best one? In which case, why do you like to see children in pain? And that, I'm only joking. But yeah, please let me know what you think about in the comments down below. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, all that good stuff. And I will see you guys next time.